Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. He endured the silence, the loneliness, the ache of wanting to speak up for her, and holding back every single time. Now, someone had finally said what he couldn't. The legendary demon was actually such a kind and gentle woman. And this ice mage. His magic was cold, but his heart was anything but. Urza found wonderful friends. She really did. That's amazing. Juvia clutched her face, sighing dreamily. Gray-sama. You're so cool. Enough with the talking. Natsu smacked the back of the river crab pulling their boat. I'm gonna rescue Urza and Happy, and then knock that gel guy's lights out. Stop rushing in on your own. Lucy barked, exasperated. And don't smack the poor crab. It's the one doing all the work. Rhodes sighed, one hand to his forehead. Things had gone so far off script. Still, there was no time to complain. They had a job to do. First priority, rescue Urza and Happy. Second, dismantle the Tower of Paradise, and free Urza from the chains of her past. Third, consider the people Gel had manipulated. If they could be saved, Rhodes would try. Chapter 394, War Begins. The enemy's ship must have been outfitted with magical enhancements. Despite pursuing it through the night, they still hadn't managed to catch up. They had set sail after sunset, with the red glow of the sun fading over the horizon. Now, the distant sky was beginning to brighten with the first light of dawn. In the pale twilight, the outlines of distant mountains came into view. Alongside a towering, foreboding silhouette that pierced the clouds above. Simon pointed toward the colossal shadow. That's the Tower of Heaven. Lucy's eyes widened. It's enormous. Simon nodded. Of course. It's 1,000 meters tall. A height of 1,000 meters, easily hundreds of floors. It was like stacking 2 of Fiore's tallest magic towers on top of each other. The fact that it had taken only 8 years to construct was impressive in itself. And during that time, they had also installed intricate magic circles, embedded lacrima crystals, and set up the core components of the R system. The effort was immense. Rhodes squinted at the horizon, calculating their course. Feels like we're about to cross into foreign waters again. Rhodes nodded in agreement, recalling a world map he had once studied. The Tower of Heaven was built near the coast of the Kingdom of KLM, right? The Kingdom of KLM was a large island nation known for its thriving seafaring economy and powerful navy. It frequently experienced friction with the Kingdom of Minstrel to the northeast. However, Fiore maintained neutrality and conducted trade with both countries. That said, this stretch of sea wasn't part of any major commercial route. Pirate activity was frequent, and the region wasn't known for its scenery or local exports. Because of that, few merchant ships passed through, and tourists rarely came this way. The surrounding coastline was covered with rocky mountains, and for nearly 100 miles inland, there wasn't a single village or settlement. Clearly, the cult that had built the R system had chosen the location carefully to remain hidden. I couldn't say for sure what country it's in. Simon admitted. I was captured when I was a child and haven't left the tower since. Simon and his companions had spent their entire lives confined within the Tower of Heaven. Their days consisted of endless labor, occasional sleep, and just enough exposure to magic to learn how to use it. They had no real knowledge of the outside world. Most of what they knew about Urza had likely been leaked deliberately by Gel, feeding their hatred and mistrust. If they were ever thrown back into society, they might only fare slightly better than Rhodes had when he first arrived in Fiore. That's fine. Rhodes said. You might not know which country we're in, but you do know how many people are still inside the tower, where Gel stays, and where the ceremony will be held. Right? Simon nodded. Yes. Besides Wally and Milyena, there used to be a few hundred guards and laborers. Used to be? Rhodes raised an eyebrow. A few days ago, Gel ordered the laborers to be temporarily relocated. He said too many people would disrupt the ceremony. And when does this ceremony begin? Tomorrow at noon. That's when the guards will gather in the tower to await Zeref's arrival. That actually simplified things. With fewer people around, infiltration would be easier. Rhodes followed up. Are there surveillance lacrima inside the tower? Simon nodded grimly. Yes. And lots of them. Jello has eyes on everything that happens in that place. All right. Rhodes said. How's everyone's magic power and stamina holding up? Myra gave a reassuring nod. All good here. Gray flexed his fingers. No problem. Natsu cracked his knuckles with a fiery grin. I'm ready to go wild. Juvia will definitely support everyone. She said sweetly, eyes locked on Gray. I'll do my best. Lucy chimed in, clutching her keys with determination. As the Tower of Heaven came into view in the distance, just within reconnaissance range, Gray created a broad ice platform for staging. At the same time, Rhodes summoned void drubs. When in doubt, drop troops first. He muttered to himself. Juvia spread her arms, casting a shimmering, one-way water veil over the group. The film bent light around them, cloaking their presence from any magical surveillance. Their infiltration strategy was simple and classic, a frontal distraction and an aerial sneak-in. Natsu would be the bait, charging in from the front gates with enough chaos to draw every eye in the tower. Nobody questioned whether he'd succeed. If causing a scene was an art, Natsu was its undisputed master. Meanwhile, Simon would be held as a potential bargaining chip. If they could exchange him for Happy, it would be worth it, even if Jello wouldn't give up Riza so easily. Once Happy was secured, it didn't matter whether Simon could rally his old companions. Reinforcements were already in place thanks to the void grubs. Rhodes and Myra would take to the skies, aiming to infiltrate the tower from the upper structure. Their top priority was locating and extracting Riza. The job of leveling the tower would be left to the summoned worms and frontline support. Worst-case scenario? They'd have to face Jello before Riza was free. Simon had warned them that Jello was powerful, but his grasp of just how powerful remained vague. Regardless, they didn't have the luxury of delay. Riza's life could be on the line with every passing second. Both Rhodes and Myra were more than capable of putting up a real fight. The tower loomed ever larger as they approached. Its sharp spire pierced the morning sky like a dark needle of dread. Rhodes extended his hand. Myra smiled and placed hers over his. Lucy added hers next, then Natsu, Gray, and finally Juvia. Who, as expected, did so with sparkles and red hearts swirling in her eyes. Fairy tale. Rhodes murmured. We'll win. Lucy declared, eyes burning with courage. Simon looked down at his still bound hands and wiggled his wrists a bit. He wanted to join the moment, but no one had thought to untie him. Awkward. Move out. Rhodes commanded. He summoned the Blue Sentinel for support, then placed a buff on both himself and Myra to enhance their perception mid-flight. Finally, he take over the Merc Wolf form to rely on its keen sense of smell to track Riza. Myra wrapped her arms around Rhodes's waist from behind, and activated her Satan Soul transformation. Wings unfurled from her back, and with a powerful beat, the two of them soared into the air. She avoided a princess carry. Probably to spare Rhodes the embarrassment in front of their teammates. Juvia extended her arm and layered a shimmering water film around the flying pair. It would only hold for a short while, but hopefully enough to cloak them from view or make them appear like strange birds at a glance. Go. Natsu yelled, yanking at the crab's tendrils like reins, urging them to speed toward the shore. The water veil shimmered and vanished as the rest of the team landed directly on the island, right at the front. From a distance, the Tower of Heaven had looked like a bizarre, vine-wrapped tree. But up close, it was clear those vines were thick pipes. Each one wider than a grown man. Made of strange, unfamiliar material. The entire island formed the tower's roots. Tubes and conduits sprawled everywhere, twisting over and under one another in an unplanned, chaotic mess. The construction gave off a wasteland tech vibe, like some clunky blend of magic and industry. It looked less like a building and more like a madman's mechanical nightmare. Though the sky hadn't fully brightened yet, as soon as their boat hit the shore, lights blinked on across the island. Several guards spotted the landing party immediately. Who goes there? Identify yourselves. One of them barked, half out of reflex, half to alert reinforcements. Natsu leapt onto the sand, fists blazing. Hand over Riza and Happy. Right now. Intruders. Sound the alarm. The guards shouted as they rushed to mobilize their ranks. But instead of attacking right away, the group waited. Deliberately letting the guards rally. There was a strategy to this madness. Gray, lagging behind his teammates, knelt beside the seawater and pressed his palms to the surface. Ice rapidly spread from his hands, forming a slick path all the way back to the distant ice platform where Rhodes had stationed the 3 void drubs. In under 10 minutes, more than 500 worm-like creatures had already hatched, wriggling restlessly across the crowded ice platform. Despite their impatience, they dared not leave their designated area. Orders from the queen worms were absolute. The moment Gray's frozen bridge reached the platform, the three massive void drubs let out guttural roars. They charged forward, skittering onto the path and surging toward the towering structure ahead like hungry beasts drawn to a feast. "I can't take it anymore," Natsu shouted, surrounded on all sides by enemy soldiers. He slammed his fists together and inhaled sharply, cheeks puffing with heat. Fire dragons roar. A massive torrent of flames burst from his mouth, lighting up the pre-dawn sky and signaling the start of all-out war. Chapter 395, 15 minutes opened the gate of Taurus. Ice make, ice cannon. Water slicer. When it came to making a scene, the fairy tale crew never held back. The moment they landed, each member unleashed dazzling, large-scale magic attacks. In seconds, the Tower of Heaven's alert level shot to maximum. All across the fortress, alarms wailed. Guards jolted awake, threw on their gear, grabbed weapons, and scrambled toward the front entrance. Even Wally and Miliana were roused by Gel's command and ordered to intercept the intruders. Sho, however, never got that far. After arrogantly boasting while guarding Mirza, he was taken out cold and left unconscious. Watching the young boy who once followed her around calling her sis now lying hurt because of Gel's schemes, Mirza's fury boiled over. She snapped the ropes binding her, a deadly calm overtaking her expression, and stormed toward the upper levels of the tower. No matter what happened today, she would end things with Gel. For good. And she would save the friends who'd been deceived and used all these years. With Wally, Miliana, and the Trinity missing from the field, the raging Mirza was like a storm. Unstoppable. No one could stand in her way. She carved down every guard who dared block her with relentless sword strikes. Gel. Clad in her iconic Heaven's Wheel armor, Mirza tore through the upper floors, her blades flashing with righteous fury. Just as her momentum reached its peak, something grotesque interrupted her charge. Mouths began to sprout from the surrounding walls. This was Gel's magic. He could grow mouths anywhere inside the tower and use them to project his voice. Functionally, it worked like a broadcast system. But visually, it was absolutely disgusting. "Welcome to the Tower of Heaven, dear members of Fairy Tale." Gel. Mirza hissed. Though it had been years since they'd last spoken, she could still recognize traces of the boy she once knew in his voice. But what he said next struck her like a thunderbolt. Her companions had come? She hadn't wanted them involved in something so dangerous. But knowing them. Of course they came. Quinn had mentioned that the Trinity were tasked with dealing with Rhodes and Myra. If Gel was speaking so confidently now, it must mean her friends had broken through. As expected. The mouths continued to speak with Gel's cold, theatrical tone. "I am Gel, master of this tower, and I invite you to play a game. The Paradise Game. The rules are simple, climb the tower and defeat me, and you win. Fail. And I will offer Riza as a living sacrifice to complete the resurrection ritual for Ziraf. But you're not the only ones playing this game. The Magic Council is watching too. In less than 15 minutes, they will launch their satellite systems attack on this place. Etherian. The ultimate spell that obliterates everything. When it falls, every soul here will be wiped out. You, me, all of us. But that would be boring, wouldn't it? So come stop me. Let's make this game fun." With that, every mouth vanished into the stone. Mirza stood trembling, fists clenched in fury. Without hesitation, she switched to her flight armor and rocketed upward at full speed. "A game? You dare mock human life like this, Gel?" The message hadn't just been for her. Down below, everyone outside the tower had heard it too. The guards were undeterred. As far as they were concerned, the return of Ziraf would make everything worth it. The blue-purple worm creatures didn't care about any of it either. They just wanted to eat. But the guards were annoying, always getting in the way. So the worms decided, bite them. Wally and Miliana looked shaken. They had never heard of something called Etherian before, and Gel's behavior today felt completely off. Why would Gel do something like this? Miliana asked, clearly distressed. Simon seized the chance. Because he's not the Gel we once knew. He's been lying to us ever since we were children. Ever since 8 years ago. Lucy's voice trembled. Why is the Magic Council involved? If Etherian is dropped, it'll be catastrophic, right? Before she could panic further, a guard lunged at her from behind. Gray slammed the attacker aside with a solid punch. Focus. We've got 15 minutes. We can stop this. You needed Lord Gray's protection? That's pathetic. Juvia sneered at Lucy, folding her arms with a smirk. But don't worry, Juvia protected him. Which means this round goes to me. Why is this suddenly a competition? Lucy grumbled, before glancing up at the towering structure. Still, with how high the tower is, can we really get up there in time? Who cares? Natsu shouted, flaming fists swinging as he decked another magic soldier. His voice was fierce, eyes sharp with fury. Rhodes will think of something. Mr. Rhodes and Ms. Myra should be fine. Lucy muttered, ducking under another swing. Why is it always me they try to pick on? Her frustration finally boiled over. With a yell, she launched her foot into an oncoming enemy. Take that. Lucy flying kick. High above, Myra was flying alongside Rhodes, her arms wrapped around his waist. Her wings beat steadily as the water-film Juvia cast shimmered faintly around them. Rhodes, did you hear what Jell said? Myra asked, a hint of worry in her voice. He said he's calling down Etherian, that's the Council's transdimensional magic. It can wipe out an entire island in a single blast. Rhodes narrowed his eyes. Yeah. And he even knows the exact time it'll be fired. That means someone in the Council must have leaked it. Myra murmured. Rhodes nodded grimly. There's a traitor. And I think I know who. He thought back. When I visited the Council last time, Wendy told me she was being looked after by someone named Jell. But Riza insisted that Wendy's Jell wasn't the same one she knew. Then, that guy Seagrain claimed they were twin brothers. Which means that Seagrain might not just be lying, he might be Jell, or working with him. Wendy mistook him for Jell. That means if it comes down to a fight, we don't have to hold back for her sake. And as for the traitor in the Council, it's probably Seagrain after all. Rhodes clicked his tongue. Ugh. I should have asked more about him when I stopped by Kate's shelter last time. But I was in such a rush to see Wendy that it slipped my mind. Stop. Rhodes said quietly. Myra halted midair at once, flapping her wings to hold them steady. Did you sense something? She asked. I caught the scent of Happy. Rhodes replied, eyes narrowing. He pointed to a floor below. That level. I'm sure that's where Happy is. He swiftly took over the blue sentinel with a flick of his hand and gave Myra a look. Myra nodded, immediately understanding the plan. With a grin, she adjusted her grip and flipped Rhodes upside down, grabbing his ankles with both hands. Then, with the strength of her Satan soul form, she spun in midair like she was swinging a flail. And launched him toward the building. Crash. Rhodes smashed clean through the outer wall and landed hard inside a room. He groaned and looked up from the floor. And blinked. The room was drenched in feline decor. Paw-print carpets. Cat-shaped chandeliers. Plush kittens dangling from the ceiling. Furniture themed with whiskers and tails. Even the walls were covered in murals of napping kittens and scratching posts. In the corner, a real kitten was pawing lazily at the wall. How obsessed with cats can one person be? Rhodes muttered, stunned. And then it clicked. This must be Miliana's room. No wonder Simon had said she'd never hurt Happy. Happy turned toward him, then its eyes went wide and sparkled with tears. Rhodes. Myra. Happy flapped his wings and threw himself straight into Myra's arms, sobbing with relief. Given Rhodes's current expression and the hole he'd just made in the wall, Happy wisely chose the safer, softer option. Chapter 396, Clear Heart Clothing. Happy was safe, and thankfully unharmed. Rhodes gently instructed him. Go. Find Natsu and let him know you're alright. He knew he had to reassure Natsu quickly. Otherwise, Natsu might rush into the tower alone out of panic. And if that happened, they'd need another rescue just to stop him from tearing down the entire place by himself. Once Happy zipped off through the air, Rhodes turned to Myra. He reapplied the blue buff effect on both of them, then Rhodes narrowed his eyes at the rubble. He crouched near the bricks and fragments knocked loose during his crash landing. Simon had mentioned that the Tower of Heaven had been constructed using large amounts of lacrima, magic crystals, to stockpile the energy needed for the R system. But the shattered lacrima embedded in these walls didn't seem right. He reached out and tapped one. Nothing. There's no magic power in them. Myra. Rhodes said, straightening up. Let's knock down a few more walls. I want to be sure. Right. Myra answered, already drawing energy into her hands. The two set to work, smashing holes in all four walls of Miliana's room, along with the floor and ceiling. But every lacrima they uncovered was the same, inert, empty of magic. No stored energy. Not even a trace. Rhodes frowned deeply. If the lacrima are charged, then how does Jell plan to activate the R system? Capturing Riza as a living sacrifice would mean nothing without the necessary power to fuel the spell. Could it be? Rhodes murmured, thinking aloud. That they're using Riza as bait. Not to activate the system, but to lure us in? Maybe they plan to capture all of Fairy Tale in one swoop and drain our magic into the tower? Myra paused, thoughtful. That's possible. But that plan sounds a little far-fetched. Before they could dwell on the theory, Myra raised her palm, a dark sphere of demonic energy crackling within it. She fired it into the wall. Boom. The blast blew apart another section. Dust and rubble scattered everywhere, but as the smoke cleared, the lacrima inside the wall stood untouched. It had absorbed the magical energy completely. Myra pressed her fingers against its surface, then drew back, looking uneasy. Even if I emptied all the magic power I have, I wouldn't be able to fully charge even a single lacrima like this. These things are built to absorb massive amounts of energy. Even if we gathered all the magic power from our entire guild, it wouldn't be enough for this whole tower. Rhodes inhaled sharply, realization dawning. Then there's only one explanation. Myra's eyes widened in horror. You mean Etherian? Rhodes nodded grimly. Yeah. It fits. From what we've seen, Jel's planning to let the council launch the Etherian blast. Then use these special lacrima embedded across the entire tower to absorb its energy. He clenched his fists. And at the same time, use Rizza to trigger the R system. He's going to convert the power of a weapon that can vaporize an island into fuel for a forbidden resurrection spell. That's insane. Myra gasped. He's planning to stay inside the tower when the Etherian hits? If even one lacrima is misaligned or undercharged, he'll be obliterated. Exactly. Rhodes said. And even if his calculations are perfect, all that condensed magic, it could detonate if he loses control for even a second. Unless he absorbs all of Etherian's energy and channels it correctly into the R system without a single mistake. This was nothing short of a death wish. If Jel wanted to gamble with his own life, that was his choice. But Rhodes had no intention of joining him in that madness. He had to get Rizza out of the tower now and destroy the entire structure before the Etherian blast could strike. Without hesitation, Rhodes and Myra burst out through the hole they'd made in the outer wall, wings flaring wide as they shot upward at top speed. Inside the upper levels of the Tower of Heaven. Specifically, the great spherical chamber beneath the spire. The massive hall stretched wide, lined with glowing etchings of ancient magic runes carved deep into the stone walls. At the very center, enormous clusters of lacrima pulsed with a faint, eerie glow. An altar stood at the heart of the chamber, raised and encircled by ritual markings. This was the core of the resurrection ceremony. If everything went according to Jel's twisted plan, then here, at 1,000 meters above the ground, Zeref would be revived, reborn in darkness, and hailed by fanatics as the harbinger of their so-called freedom. Jel had dreamed of this moment for years. There were two absolute requirements to activate the R system. First, 2.7 billion ideas worth of magical power, and second, a living sacrifice with power equivalent to one of the 10 wizard saints. In the 8 years since the Tower of Heaven's construction began, Jel had focused all his energy on fulfilling those conditions. Now, Etherian was moments from striking. Soon, he would have the magic power he needed. And as for the living sacrifice, Jel's eyes fell on the bloodied and battered figure of Rizza Scarlet standing before him. He smiled. Taste it, Rizza. The bitter flavor of false freedom. Why did you charge straight toward me instead of running away? Rizza's breath came in hard gasps. Her body was covered in bruises and cuts. The sky wheel armor had already shattered. Her black wing armor had been torn apart. Even her flight armor couldn't endure another hit. But her will was still unshaken. I came here to save my friends, she said through gritted teeth. And to finish what we started. You and I. Dark energy pulsed in the air. Jel had been using forbidden magic from the beginning. It had worn her down, pushed her to her limits. But Rizza wasn't finished yet. Requip. Purgatory armor. A new flash of light burst around her. When it cleared, she stood tall in pitch black armor heavy with divine pressure. Thick plates covered her body, and in her hand appeared a jagged, massive broadsword that required both arms to wield. The tip of the sword dragged across the floor as she stepped forward, sparking against the stone and sending chips of rock flying in her wake. Jel narrowed his eyes. Purgatory armor? Ha. Doesn't really suit a place called the Tower of Heaven, don't you think? He raised his left hand, fingers spread wide. Dark rapture. Serpentine. From his palm, 5 serpentine streams of black energy slithered through the air like living shadows, each one hissing as it flew toward Rizza. Her crimson eyes flashed. What heaven? This place is nothing but true hell. She swung her great blade in a sweeping arc, cleaving through all 5 serpents in one powerful motion. Then, without losing momentum, she pivoted her grip and brought the broadsword down with full force. Straight at Jel's neck. Jel swiftly leapt backward, pulling his left fist close before thrusting his right index finger forward. A sudden burst of dark energy shot through the air and struck Rizza hard on the shoulder, detonating on impact. The blow staggered her, halting her forward momentum. Without missing a beat, Jel lunged forward. His left hand curled into a claw, and 5 black, serpentine shadows slithered forth from his palm. They twisted through the air, bypassing Rizza's heavy broadsword, and coiled around her wrist. The snakes slinked up her shoulder and locked down her arm. She gritted her teeth, trying to resist. But it wasn't over yet. Another 5 serpents burst from Jell's right hand, binding her waist and coiling up around her throat. GHH. Mirza gasped as the pressure tightened. The jagged sword slipped from her grasp and clattered to the floor. She struggled desperately, but the constriction was too strong. Her limbs were pinned, and she couldn't even reach up to pry the shadowy coils from her neck. "You can't win, Mirza," Jell said, stepping forward, his voice low and smug. "I acknowledge your strength. But right now, you're far too weak." He stood before her now, staring into her pained eyes. "Come," he continued, spreading his arms wide. "Become Ziraf's sacrifice. That is your fate. Your honor. Everything has been predestined. With your offering, we'll usher in a new era. Even if you won't live to see it, you'll become eternal in another form." He spoke as if reciting prophecy, but Riz's thoughts narrowed in on a single line. "Yes. I'm too weak." Because she was weak, she always wore armor. Because she was weak, she clung to the safety and warmth of the guild. Because she was weak, she constantly worried she wouldn't be able to protect the one she loved. The armor she always wore had shielded her. Not just from enemy attacks, but from her own fears and anxieties. Yet, even so, the warmth of the guild had always found a way to seep through the cracks in her defenses. Her friends had shown her what true connection meant. They gave her strength even when she doubted herself. That's why. Mirza's black armor vanished in a shimmer of light. In its place was her iconic clear heart clothing, a simple crimson hakama with golden flame designs and a white chest strap. It was her most vulnerable form, and her most resolute. The instant the armor faded, she twisted her body with newfound freedom. Twin Katanas flashed into her hands with a burst of Requip magic. With a single fluid movement, she cleaved through the dark serpents binding her. One by one, the snakes dissolved into mist and vanished. Barefoot, standing tall with her crimson ponytail swaying behind her, the Titania of fairy tale locked eyes with her foe. No longer clouded by fear or hesitation. "I'm done wavering." Her voice rang out like steel. "For the sake of my comrades, for the ones who came here to save me, I'll transform all my strength, all my heart, into power to defeat you." Chapter 397, Thought Projection? Wizard Saint? When the twin blades carved through Jell's magical defenses and struck his chest, he truly believed that would be the end. A searing pain exploded across his torso as the blades left behind an X-shaped gash. His shirt tore open, and blood poured from the wounds. For a brief moment, consciousness nearly slipped away. He knew it, he was no match for Rizza in his state. But he couldn't afford to die. Not yet. Clang. Clang. The two swords slammed into the floor on either side of his neck, stopping just short of taking his life. Rizza exhaled sharply and sat down beside him. "What's your real goal here, Jell?" "I've studied the R system. Sure, the structure and theory are plausible. But the most important requirement is impossible to meet." Despite everything, she was still trying to reach him with reason. That was just like Rizza. Unable to bring herself to finish off a former friend. Jell let out a sly chuckle, lips curling into a dangerous grin. "Didn't I already say it? The key requirement is you, Rizza. The perfect living sacrifice. It's not about the sacrifice." Rizza's voice sharpened, frustration flaring. "It's the magic power. You need 2.7 billion units of ether nano to activate the R system. Even if we gathered every wizard across the continent, we still might not have enough." Jell fell silent. If he said any more, he'd risk giving something away. Better to change the subject. "Still planning to stay? In a few minutes, Etherian will fall. Jell. Your dream ends here. Do you really want to die like this?" Rizza pleaded. She still hoped to save the boy she once knew, the boy who'd lost his way. Jell's expression softened, just like the kind smile she remembered from childhood. "I don't have a choice. My body's no longer my own. Ziraf's lingering will has taken hold of me. I'm just a puppet being used to bring him back." Possessed. That smile. Warm, gentle, the same one that had once given her hope, it shook Rizza. For a moment, her thoughts wavered. "I can't save myself." "No one can." Jell murmured. "I." Boom. Rhodes burst through the upper chamber wall, Myra flying in right behind him. He looked at the battered Jell on the ground and blinked. "Is it over already?" Rizza looked flustered. "No, he. If you're hesitating, then I'll do it." Rhodes cut in. "Otherwise, bind him for now. But either way, we're leaving. Etherian could hit any minute. We can't trust this tower to hold. Everyone down below is still waiting for us." His words came out in a blur as he moved forward decisively. "Wait, Rhodes." Rizza blocked him. "It's more complicated than that. Myra, can you put him to sleep with a spell?" Jell's eyes darkened. The fairy strategist wouldn't fall for his tricks so easily. "Alter." In the Magic Council's war chamber, Sea Grain, still masquerading under that false identity, suddenly whispered to Ultra and streaked out in a flash of golden light. "What the hell is he doing?" barked Torg, eyes wide with fury. "He's the one who pushed for Etherian, and now he's running away?" Although the Council held command over Etherian, it wasn't a weapon to be used lightly. Every launch required justification. This time, they had gambled everything. The Tower of Heaven was home to potential hostages and innocent lives. Even if it was to prevent Zeref's return, there would be backlash. Legal repercussions. Reputations at stake. Some of them might have to step down. Some could face tribunal judgment. And yet, the very man who had aggressively advocated for the strike, the one who had convinced them to go forward, had just vanished. Did he really think fleeing would absolve him of responsibility? "Please be patient, Lord Org," Ultra said gently. Her voice was calm, her tone slow and deliberate, as if soothing the Council's nerves. In truth, she was only trying to buy time. Just a few more minutes, she needed a better excuse to cover Seagrain's sudden disappearance. Lord Seagrain received urgent intelligence that must be confirmed immediately. Org's brows furrowed. What kind of intelligence demands personal confirmation at such a critical time? Ultra offered a soft, enigmatic smile. "It concerns the lives of the innocent civilians. The very people you all have vowed to protect, even at great personal cost." "What did you say? Explain yourself clearly." The Council members stirred uneasily. Though they had steeled themselves to take responsibility for Etherian's deployment, no one truly wished to stain their legacy with the needless deaths of innocents. Ultra knew this well. And pressed the advantage. "The Kingdom of KLM has just reported that the laborers forced to build the Tower of Heaven have returned home safely." "Which means?" The Council members leaned forward. "Gel released them when construction was complete? There are no civilians left inside the tower? Is that report confirmed?" Ultra nodded lightly. "That's why Lord Seagrain needed to verify the information in person. The matter is of utmost importance. If it's true, that would be a relief." Their expressions softened. If the tower truly held no innocent lives, the guilt of authorizing Etherian would be easier to bear. Later, they could justify the decision with pride, claiming that the Council acted with precision and resolve. Only Yajima remained still. His gaze fixed on Ultra, thoughtful and quiet. Was it really that simple? None of the Council realized the truth. The moment Seagrain vanished from sight, he slipped through dimensions. In the blink of an eye, he arrived inside the Tower of Heaven. "Wait!" Seagrain called out, his voice sharp. He raised a hand to stop Myra. "If you use hypnosis magic, it could disturb Zeref's lingering spirit. Summon Brambleback. Red buff. Take over, Mountain Dragon Soul." Rhodes didn't hesitate. The moment Seagrain appeared, Rhodes activated his magic. With a powerful flap of his wings, he dove low, swooping forward in a blur. In one swift motion, he crashed into Ursa, knocking her aside with brute force. Then he slammed his fist square into Gel's temple. "No!" Ursa cried out, but she was already airborne, flung across the chamber. Her back struck a wall lined with arcane runes. She winced, pain shooting through her limbs, but ignored it. "Gel!" she gasped, scrambling to her feet. But it was too late. Gel, completely unguarded, took the full force of Rhodes' punch. His eyes rolled back. The blow sent him flying. First into the giant magic crystal in the center of the hall, shattering it on impact. Then he crashed into the altar meant for Zeref's resurrection, splintering it. Still airborne, his body slammed into the rear wall and tumbled all the way to the outermost balcony. There, his momentum finally slowed. His neck grazing the edge of the sword that had been previously driven into the ground. A deep gash opened across his throat. Blood poured freely. It was unclear if the blade had cut through his trachea, his artery, or both. Was he still alive? "You!" Seagrain's image flickered violently, his body beginning to distort. His once solid figure grew hazy, translucent, like the other half of a magnet being drawn toward its source. He drifted helplessly toward Gel's motionless body. He only wanted to stall for a few more minutes, just a little more time. Why had this man acted so quickly, so ruthlessly? Didn't he care about Riz's feelings at all? Riz's breath caught. A thought projection? Rhodes and Myra exchanged stunned glances. Counselor Seagrain was actually just a thought projection of Gel all along? If Lucy had been there, she'd definitely be yelling at Rhodes for acting without thinking again. But Rhodes had believed Seagrain and Gel were twin brothers, working together in secret. He attacked without hesitation because he didn't want a rogue council member interfering. Especially not one who'd turn one boss battle into two. But this? Just a projection? A thought projection that infiltrated the Magic Council, posed as a counselor for years, and was even named one of the 10 Wizard Saints, all while remaining completely undetected? And the real body, The one that Rizzo had just barely managed to fight, was this powerful? Then, if that was only half of him, how terrifying would Jello be at full strength? Chapter 398, Come Out, Mountain Dragon. Jello. Even after realizing she'd been deceived, Rizzo's first instinct was still to worry about his safety. She took only a few steps forward before suddenly halting in confusion. What? What is this? Dark red markings, like spectral serpents, or perhaps chains, slithered over her body, binding her in place. My body. I can't move. Not only that, but the ground beneath her cracked open. A jagged fracture revealed a large magic crystal hidden beneath the floor. The red chains began pulling her downward, her toes were already submerged in the crystal surface, as if she were melting into it. She couldn't move a muscle. Not even a finger. The spell bound her completely. Ursa. Myra stepped closer quickly. This is a sealing spell. Some kind of restrained sigil. When did it activate? Ursa's thoughts raced. Her memory snapped back to Jello's subtle movements during their earlier conversation. She had assumed his twitching was due to his injuries, grimaces of pain from Rhodes' blow, but now she saw the truth. It wasn't pain. It was spellwork. He had tricked her. Everything. Open your heart. Twin brothers. All of it had been a lie. Right up until the very end. Ugh. Ursa bit her lip hard. A single tear traced down her left cheek. The sensation of being absorbed into the crystal was painful. But it was nothing compared to the ache in her chest. Myra didn't waste a second. She grabbed Ursa and yanked her free from the encroaching crystal with sheer force. She didn't know how to undo the seal, so she simply scooped Ursa into her arms and prepared to get her out first. They could figure out the rest later. Myra. Ursa's voice was faint. She bit her lip again, trembling slightly. The Titania, the strongest woman of fairy tale, now looked fragile and defeated. Her tears fell silently, full of pain and guilt. Not only had she failed to save Jello, she had endangered her comrades. If Rhodes had hesitated even a moment longer, Jello's thought projection would have reconnected and restored his full power. And then, they would have faced a monster. They didn't have the entire guild with them this time. Why? Why had the Jello she once loved, the gentle boy who offered her light, turned into this? Myra must have sensed Ursa's shame. She shifted her hold slightly, letting Ursa rest her face against her shoulder, burying the evidence of her tears. Gently, she patted Ursa's back and whispered, "It's okay now. We're here. Everyone's waiting for you outside. Let's go home, all right?" Meanwhile, Rhodes, who had been watching, sighed. First happy. Now Ursa. Why does everyone keep stealing my spotlight today? He thought with mock frustration. Still, given the kind of day it had been, Rhodes generously decided to let it go. Just this once. At that moment, all three of them suddenly received a magical transmission. More accurately, it was telepathic communication magic, but this one seemed a lot more courteous than Warren's usual loud broadcasts. This call came with options. They could reject the transmission or even block the caster if they wanted to. Whoever it was clearly wasn't as aggressive as Warren. All three accepted the call. A familiar voice echoed in their minds. "Can you hear me? It's Simon." Simon? Ursa blinked in surprise. She hadn't known he was on their side, so the name caught her off guard. Ursa. You're okay? That's a relief. Stick to the important stuff. Rhodes interjected sharply. How's your side? The guards are down. Simon responded. Wally and Milyana have joined us. Sho's unconscious, but we got him out. The void worms have started eating away at the Tower of Heaven. We're ready to evacuate. In truth, most of them were still in the dark. They had joined up while confused or unconscious, still operating on instinct. The explanations could wait until later. Perfect? Pull back immediately. We still don't know how powerful Etherian will be. Get as far away as you can. Juvia can use her water magic to propel the boat. If that's not enough, let Lucy call on Aquarius. We'll all die out here at this rate. Came Lucy's voice. High-pitched and filled with exasperated worry. We know. What about you guys? Simon asked quickly. We'll fly out ourselves. We're heading out now. You're not going anywhere. Came a growling voice from behind them. Jello. He was still standing, barely. Blood poured down from his forehead, masking the red-etched curse marks along his face. One eye had swollen shut. His neck wound still bled, soaking his collar and shoulder red. And yet, despite all that, the madness in his expression hadn't dulled. If anything, it had sharpened. Twisted into something feral. He looked like a demon that had just clawed its way out of hell. Give it up, Jello. Mirza called out, her voice wavering. It's over. But he didn't listen. Instead, he raised both arms high. It's not over. Jello howled. My dream has just begun. Great Zeref, accept this offering, her body and soul. A sinister pressure surged from his battered frame. He wasn't using his remaining strength to heal or escape. He was using it all to attack. To kill. You'll die. Mirza shouted. In paradise, death means unity. There's no fear in true freedom. He cried, voice cracking like thunder. His arms stretched upward, palms splayed. Above them, the air trembled, and a jet-black sphere began forming. It crackled with raw, destructive energy, swirling like a miniature abyss. In mere seconds, it had grown to over a meter in diameter. The black sphere spun slowly, like a miniature black hole, pulling at everything nearby, curtains, rubble, even the light from the wall lamps and shattered chandeliers. A gust burst across the once calm floor, howling in every direction. Rhodes and Myra braced themselves, their boots scraping across the stone tiles. Their shadows didn't follow the light anymore. They stretched the wrong way, bending toward the growing orb of darkness. Myra tightened her grip around Urza, stepping back carefully. Be careful. If you get pulled into that thing, your whole body will be crushed to dust. Then let him try. Rhodes shouted. He grabbed the pendant at his chest, holding it forward like a badge of defiance. Summon, Mountain Dragon. BZZMM. An earth and yellow pulse of magic spread out from the pendant like a quake through the air. Then the room shook. A hulking shape dropped down, folding its wings close to its sides. The room, already strained, suddenly felt like a tiny box about to burst. The pressure Jell had been exerting vanished in an instant. Jell's lone open eye bulged in disbelief. A dragon? The mountain dragon. Massive, rugged, ancient, lifted its head. Brown, vertical slit eyes opened slowly like twin fault lines, locking onto Jell. Those reptilian eyes carried the calm dominance of a mountain range. Still, patient, unyielding, and cold. Jell involuntarily took half a step back, his magic faltering. Ah! The dragon gave a long, slow exhale through its nostrils, like wind rolling off a cliff. It straightened lazily, lifting its torso and flapping its wings once. Boom! That single flap shattered both side walls. Its head hit the ceiling. A rumble followed as stone and glowing crystal chunks came raining down from above, some tumbling off the dragon's broad back like pebbles down a hillside. Rhodes scrambled a few steps away to avoid the debris and looked up. The dragon stared at him. Its gaze plainly said, "Why summon me into a shoebox?" Rhodes smiled sheepishly, knowing full well that even its mildest action was catastrophic. The tower groaned. The outer walls had already cracked from the summoning. But now, with another casual shift of its wings, crack! The entire spire of the tower wrenched upward, snapped off like a tree limb, and tilted. Boom! The top half of the tower flipped over, hurtling down toward the water like a collapsing mountain. Rhodes didn't hesitate. He activated Simon's telepathic channel and shouted. Everyone below, get out now. The tower top's coming down. Run. Then he turned to the mountain dragon, pointing toward Jell. That blue-haired lunatic is the enemy. Feel free to knock down the rest of the tower. Just don't get hit, there's a massive spell coming. The dragon grunted low and nodded. Or at least, that's what it looked like. Then it turned its giant body, now unrestricted by a ceiling, with a heavy rustling of wings. You destroyed what took me 8 years to build. Jell's voice trembled, full of wrath. For Zeref. For absolute freedom. I won't forgive even a dragon. He screamed, Dark Paradise. The giant black orb in his hands pulsed. He hurled it forward. Now the sphere spanned 2 meters wide. Stars, crescent moons, and celestial trails glimmering inside like a twisted cosmos. It was no longer just a spell. It looked like he had thrown an entire galaxy. The mountain dragon did not flinch. It braced itself and let the orb strike its chest. Kaboom! Chapter 399, Ethereal. The smoke and dust began to settle. The mountain dragon's massive frame hadn't moved an inch. Not even its claw had shifted. In fact, it had extended its wings like a protective dome, shielding everyone behind it from the brunt of the blast. Rhodes, Myra, and Urza hadn't even felt the pressure of Jell's last desperate attack. Jell, of course, hadn't expected to kill a dragon in one blow. But the dragon's sheer indifference, its complete dismissal of his full-force magic, made something inside him snap. With a flash of golden light, Jell launched into the air like a meteor, a fiery trail streaking behind him. In an instant, he had retreated dozens of meters. His hands came together, one pointed toward the heavens, the other toward the earth, as he began to chant a final incantation. If this spell destroyed the Tower of Heaven, so be it. True celestial magic, grand star collapse. Above, the night sky shifted ominously. Clouds twisted and churned, spiraling into a vast vortex. The starlight vanished, consumed by the dense magical gloom. And from the center of that storm, A meteor poked its head through the swirling clouds. It started small. Then it began to fall, and it kept getting bigger. Its bottom edge turned molten red as it plummeted toward the tower like judgment from the sky. Myra held Riza tightly in her left arm, still immobilized by the sealing spell. And Rhodes with her right. With a burst of wing speed, she flew them out of the crumbling tower of heaven. As they crossed the outer wall, a thunderous roar echoed from the sky above. They turned instinctively. The meteorite had broken free of the clouds. It was enormous now. Its underside glowing like a furnace. Myra's jaw dropped. What in the world? Riza's voice trembled. That's the true power of heavenly body magic. Jell is going all out. Rhodes flinched as a pulse of pressure slammed through the air. So this is the real boss form. Good thing we're not fighting it head-on. Whatever this spell was, it wasn't meant for mortals to deal with alone. The explosion of power was visible across the sea. Far below, the rest of the team, who had just made it a safe distance, were frozen in awe. Juvia had been pushing 2 boats forward with her water magic, but now her eyes were fixed on the sky. That's really magic? She whispered. Happy's wings drooped slightly. Will Riza and the others be okay? Lucy clasped her hands over her mouth. Rhodes said they'd escape soon, but that thing is falling right where they were. Simon clenched his fists, worried. He turned to Happy. Hey, Cat. Can you fly me up there? I'll do it if I have to. Knots leapt from the back of a giant crab, fire flaring from his mouth. If that's a giant rock, I'll punch it in the face. Don't be reckless, Flame Brain. Gray snapped, though even he couldn't hide the tension in his voice. There's something up there. Something huge. The tower was too tall, and the night too dark, for any of them to see clearly. But as the meteor descended, its burning light cast long shadows across the land. Then they saw it, barely outlined against the blaze. A pair of massive wings. A hulking silhouette. Is that a dragon? Knots' eyes lit up. I almost forgot. Rhodes still has that dragon. The others turned in stunned anticipation. Far above, the colossal figure atop the ruined tower took to the skies. The mountain dragon launched itself upward in a blur of earth and light, rising to meet the falling meteorite. A deafening boom echoed across the ocean. The meteorite shattered on impact, bursting into countless fiery fragments. But as they lost momentum, the flames fizzled out, leaving behind harmless chunks of stone drifting in the air. A small scorch mark singed the top of the mountain dragon's head. But it didn't even flinch. Instead, it spun midair with astonishing agility. As it turned, the fragments of the meteor began to orbit around it. Like an asteroid belt circling a massive planet. Everyone watching from below could only stare in awe. How is that even possible? Jell gasped. His strongest spell had been destroyed, not unraveled, not sealed, but crushed by raw force. Sure, the meteor hadn't reached terminal speed. But still. That was heavenly body magic. And this beast treated it like a toy. So this was a dragon? The mountain dragon shifted its gaze toward Rhodes, watching him like a sentry awaiting orders. When it saw Rhodes give a small nod, the dragon angled its wings, adjusting its stance. Then it released the debris that had been circling it. With a thunderous flap, the stones dropped all at once like a meteor shower. Dozens of blazing shards rained down in a wide arc, all aimed at Jell. And that wasn't all. As Jell dodged and deflected the incoming barrage, the mountain dragon inhaled. The air distorted. The wind stopped. Then came the roar. Roar. A blast of raw, yellow-gold energy burst from the dragon's mouth. The roar echoed through the heavens, and the beam of compressed draconic energy shot downward like the wrath of nature itself. The ground trembled. The tower groaned. The earth-yellow breath tore from the sky straight down to the sea, swallowing Jell whole. Where Rhodes's breath might have flattened a mountaintop, the mountain dragon's breath would erase the entire mountain range, transforming it into a cratered basin. A towering wave erupted where the breath struck the sea. It was as though the gods themselves had hurled a mountain into the ocean. The impact sent massive tsunamis rolling across the horizon. A wall of seawater swept over the shores of the island, crashing into the base of the Tower of Heaven. Thousands of the magical worms gnawing at the tower were instantly obliterated. The once proud tower, nearly 1,000 meters tall, shuddered. It leaned. It cracked. It groaned like a dying giant. On the sea, the fleeing boats bobbed wildly as the tsunami reached them. Myra's earlier warning had proven true, the aftershock reached farther than any of them had imagined. But thanks to Juvia's quick thinking and her command over water, the boats stabilized just in time. Had it been a moment later, they might have capsized and been lost to the sea. Hovering high in the sky, Mirza stared downward with a conflicted expression. That kind of attack. Even with her adamantine armor, she might only barely survive. If the mountain dragon's breath had been directed at her, she wouldn't have stood a chance. But at the same time, without that overwhelming force, they might have all perished. The beast that Rhodes had summoned was too strong. And yet, that power had saved them. Rhodes watched the dragon with admiration. And a hint of envy. One day, he thought to himself, my breath will have that kind of power too. Then his eyes shifted to the sea. Even if Rhodes didn't want to kill him, out of respect for Ursa, Jello would still need to be sealed in a prison with no fewer than 10 magic blocking stones. That kind of power couldn't be left unchecked. The mountain dragon, seemingly still remembering Rhodes's earlier command, turned its massive body midair. It dove, leveled out near the midsection of the tower, then rammed it head-on. Rhodes blinked. It fights with its head? First the meteorite, and now the tower. The dragon didn't seem to care for elegance. Just brute, unrelenting force. But it worked. The Tower of Heaven, its base already hollowed by the swarm of void mites, cracked like a half-gnawed tree. Then it fell. The groan of stone and steel echoed across the sea. The 1,000-meter structure split in half mid-fall. Sections crumbled before they even hit the water, disintegrating under their own weight. By the time it struck the ocean, it was little more than debris. A wave surged outward from the impact, but it was nothing compared to what the dragon's breath had done. The Paradise Tower, monument of suffering, manipulation, and twisted ambition, was gone. The mountain dragon, satisfied with its work, circled once more. It flapped its wings twice and soared after Myra, who carried Rhodes and the weakened Ursa in her arms. The beast flew overhead, twisting its long neck to peer down at Rhodes as if to say, "Did I do well?" Rhodes looked up at the dragon's proud gaze and sighed, feeling his magic draining fast. "If you're not in a rush to go home, mind giving us a ride?" As if it understood, the dragon maintained its flight pattern above them. Then suddenly, a massive magic circle lit up the sky. It covered the entire island. High above, a brilliant sphere of light formed at the center of the circle, radiating pressure so intense it made the air shudder. A terrifying surge of magical energy pulsed downward. The Magic Council's doomsday cannon had reached full charge. Rhodes stared at the light, dumbfounded. "The tower's already gone," he muttered. "Why are they still firing? Are those council reviewers blind?" Chapter 400, The Dragon Spoke. The mountain dragon glanced back at the massive sphere of energy forming above the island. Etherian was ready to fire. A flicker of unease flashed in the dragon's eyes. Whether it understood Rhodes' command or simply acted on instinct, it gently scooped the three of them, Rhodes, Myra, and Ursa, into its enormous palm. Myra glanced at Rhodes. When he didn't say anything, she quietly cancelled her takeover magic. With that, the three of them huddled together in the dragon's hand. Surprisingly, it didn't feel cramped even as she found herself pressed against Ursa. She looked over at Rhodes again. But Rhodes had no time to respond. The wind howled past their ears as the mountain dragon suddenly accelerated, its speed far beyond anything Myra could match with her wings. Just as the first beam of Etherian's light burst through the sky, the mountain dragon had already carried the trio away from the tower and rejoined their companions, who were still aboard the fleeing boats. Everyone on deck stared in stunned silence until Rhodes yelled down. "Gray! Make a hanging basket. Natsu, get ready to board." Without hesitation, Gray activated his ice make magic. Crystals of ice grew rapidly, linking the two boats with thick beams. Curved ice pillars extended upward and joined into handles, forming a sturdy, makeshift basket. Natsu groaned in reluctance but still leapt in. The mountain dragon understood immediately. It reached out with its hind claws, gripping the basket by its icy handles and soaring forward with the boats dangling behind. Its claws looked alarmingly strong, and for a moment, everyone worried whether Gray's creation would hold. But they had no time to second-guess. Etherian fired. A blinding white beam pierced through the sky, striking directly at the island where the Tower of Heaven once stood. The entire night sky lit up as if it were day. A deafening explosion echoed across the ocean, and waves rose high into the air. From the dragon's palm, Myra, Rhodes, and Ursa could only see the mountain dragon's underside. But those in the ice basket had a full view of Etherian's terrifying power. When the beam finally faded, the ocean surged to fill the massive crater left behind. A great cloud of steam rose where the island once stood. The Tower of Heaven, and the entire landmass it sat on, was gone. "So that's Etherian," someone whispered in awe. Everyone was stunned. The sheer power held by the Magic Council was staggering. With how often their guild had found itself at odds with the Council, should they be grateful they hadn't been blasted long ago? Strangely, Natsu, who should have been the most terrified, was now slumped over the edge of the basket, covering his mouth. "Ugh!" he groaned. Lucy patted him on the back, concerned. "Are you okay? You're not going to throw up, are you? MMFF. If you're gonna puke, do it somewhere else." Gray said without mercy. Juvia will protect Gray-sama. Juvia declared with determination, instantly shielding him with her body. Happy blinked and stared at them suspiciously. There's something going on between you two. Juvia, unexpectedly, found herself liking this nosy little cat. Simon, meanwhile, couldn't take his eyes off Ursa, held safely in the mountain dragon's front claws. His heart clenched with worry. Was she injured? Brace yourselves. Speeding up. Rhodes called to everyone, pointing in a direction up ahead. The mountain dragon beat its wings. Its acceleration nothing short of breathtaking. Wah! Lucy screamed as she flung herself into Natsu's arms. The sudden jolt nearly sent them both flying out of the basket. Gray grabbed Lucy's collar from behind to steady her, while Simon reached out and caught Natsu by the scarf. Juvia wanted to protest, it was truly a burden to Gray-sama, but when she opened her mouth, the rushing wind nearly choked her. Everyone endured the high-speed flight in stunned silence. They had spent half the night rowing out to the Tower of Heaven. And yet, the return trip took only minutes. The power of a dragon was truly enviable. The mountain dragon landed gracefully on the beach, gently setting the ice basket down on the sand before lowering its palm and placing the three passengers, Rhodes, Myra, and Ursa, onto the ground. Myra caught Rhodes just as his knees wobbled. Lucy hurried over with quiet tact and helped Ursa up. Everyone stood still, gazing in awe at the massive creature before them. They had 1,000 questions, but seeing the dragon tilt its head side to side, observing Rhodes with curious, intelligent eyes, they held their tongues. They didn't speak. But the mountain dragon did. Its voice was deep and steady, surprisingly gentle despite the immense power behind it. Not bad. I'll introduce you to a friend later. It talked? Lucy blurted out before she could stop herself, her instinct to complain overwhelming her usual caution. The dragon turned to look at her. Lucy immediately clapped her hands over her mouth, her face pale. Wait. Introduce a friend? Another dragon? Rhodes stared at the dragon, narrowing his eyes. So you can talk. Then why didn't you ever say anything before when I summoned you? Without a moment of hesitation, the dragon replied. The summoning durations were too short. I always felt like if I tried to speak, I'd be dismissed before finishing a single sentence. Because someone didn't have enough magic power. Rhodes' expression twitched. Who are you calling short on magic? That's an exaggeration. The mountain dragon turned away from him with a huff and set its gaze on Natsu, who was now stumbling closer, fists clenched. Just in time. Come fight me. Natsu declared. What are you saying? Lucy panicked. You want to fight a dragon? That thing's our friend, right? I'm a dragon's lair. Of course I have to fight a dragon. Natsu insisted, eyes blazing with determination. The mountain dragon calmly lowered its massive body, stretching out a foreleg. Its paw hovered above Natsu, and with a single curled finger, it gave him the gentlest flick. Wah-ah! Natsu yelped as he was sent flying. Straight into the sea with a splash. Natsu! Happy called out and flapped his wings, chasing after his partner. The mountain dragon let out a deep, rumbling sigh. That felt good. The mountain dragon gave a silent, knowing smile before its body began to fade into golden particles, disappearing from sight. Myra turned to Rhodes, lightly poking his cheek. Why are you sulking? Are you jealous of Natsu? Rhodes crossed his arms, still annoyed. It said I don't last long. Come on, judge for yourself. Today I used both takeover and summoned a dragon. I was durable, right? Yes, you've been. Very impressive. Myra tried to respond seriously, but the phrasing made her pause. Something about it felt off. Nearby, Ursa flexed her fingers and glanced at Lucy. You can let go now. Lucy hesitated. Are you sure you're all right? I'm fine. Myra watched as Ursa stood tall and rotated her arms and shoulders with ease. You can move again? Yes. Ursa nodded. Looks like the binding spell's time ran out. Most enchantments had a fixed duration based on the caster's remaining magic power. If the spell wasn't reinforced, it naturally dissolved once the energy ran out. Simon. Ursa turned toward him, still confused. Why? Why are you here? Simon gave her a calm, sincere explanation of everything that had happened. Then he looked at her earnestly. It's good to see you again, Ursa. Simon. Without hesitation, Ursa stepped forward and embraced him. After the betrayal of Jel, the confusion of Milyana and Wally, and the uncertainty surrounding Sho, Simon's unwavering loyalty felt like a rare, grounding light. When they finally broke apart, the tall and broad-shouldered Simon, who stood almost as high as Elfman, was blushing faintly. Ursa didn't notice. She turned to look toward the small boats they'd used to escape. What about Sho and the others? Simon scratched his head. I'm not sure who knocked Sho out. Milyana and Wally were both taken down during the fight. They're fine. Just unconscious. Mirza winced. She was the one who'd struck Sho. He still hadn't woken up. Maybe she had hit too hard. Gray glanced away, pretending not to hear. He was responsible for smashing Wally. As for Milyana, well, Natsu had distracted her with Happy, then floored her with a sneak punch. Suddenly, Simon covered his chest and coughed twice. Simon, are you hurt? Mirza quickly turned to him, eyes wide with concern. This time, it was Rhodes who looked up at the sky, whistling innocently. That injury? Yeah. That was his doing. Chapter 401, I want to take on an S-level mission. Although Rhodes had been on the opposing side earlier and his actions were justified under the circumstances, he still offered a sincere apology to Simon. Naturally, Simon didn't hold any resentment. For him, rescuing Mirza and breaking free from the shadow of the Tower of Heaven were far more important than anything else. The same held true for the rest of their companions. As for Gel, after suffering a direct hit from a dragon's breath and enduring the full blast of the Magic Council's Etherian cannon, it would be difficult to locate him now, let alone confirm if he survived. Mirza felt deep sorrow that she hadn't been able to reach him in time to bring him back. Her heart ached over what he had become and what he had done. Simon, too, held a silent regret. Despite Gel's fall from grace, he had once been their friend and a spiritual guide. Neither of them said his name. They simply stood quietly, gazing toward the sea where the tower once stood, lost in thought. The image of the meteorite, the roar of the mountain dragon, and the blinding power of Etherian still echoed vividly in their minds, along with the look of madness in Gel's eyes. Trying to lift the mood, Myra stepped in with a gentle suggestion. Why don't we head back to the inn first? Everyone's banged up and needs bandages. All right. Mirza nodded and gently hoisted Hugh onto her back. Gray picked up Wally, slinging him over his shoulder. Natsu, already out of the sea and now dried off by his fire magic, hoisted Milyana like a sack of potatoes. Rhodes moved down the line, checking on everyone. Then he turned to Simon with a mischievous grin. So, going by this pattern, do you want me to carry you too? Simon gave a weak chuckle and waved it off. I'll manage. You don't look like you're holding up too well yourself. Oh, that's fine. Rhodes said with mock dignity, leaning shamelessly against Myra for support. Out of earshot from the others, he whispered to Simon. Just a heads up. Don't let Mirza be the one to bandage you. Huh? Why not? Rhodes sighed like a man who had seen things. Let's just say, some lessons are paid for in blood and tears. Myra gave him a gentle slap on the back. Don't exaggerate. It's been a while. Mirza's probably improved. Simon blinked, still confused. Juvia, meanwhile, clasped her hands to her chest and lovingly gazed at Gray. Juvia wants to help Gray-sama with the bandages. Lucy blinked. But he's not even that badly injured, is he? Juvia shot her a suspicious glare. Love rival. Lucy recoiled slightly. Wait. What? That's not even related. Just ahead, Rhodes turned his head around and called out. Hey. One of you pick up Gray's pants. They fell off. Lucy made a face. Why would I want to help him with that? I'll do it. Juvia's eyes sparkled a little too brightly. Gray-sama's pants. She's kind of terrifying. Lucy muttered, quickly speeding up so she didn't have to walk beside Juvia anymore. Back at the inn, things were far from calm. The earlier chaos had prompted the innkeeper to summon the local security team. After nightfall, the 3 Tritonti ravens from earlier were carted away for questioning. Rhodes had left a note explaining the basics of the situation, but a little cratered island and massive magical disturbance didn't exactly go unnoticed. Thankfully, the inn had several rooms available, and the staff, already retired for the night, had prepared beds in advance. With Myra's room damaged during the earlier commotion, Rhodes, very reluctantly, tugged her along into his. What are you smirking at? Myra eyed him suspiciously as she pulled out the first aid kit. Sit down and give me your arm. Rhodes had taken 2 light stabs from Trinity Raven earlier. While the wounds weren't deep, the initial treatment had been rushed. Myra insisted on cleaning and properly rebandaging him now. After she finished, Rhodes tested his arm and then glanced down at Myra's stomach. How about you? Does it still hurt? I'm fine. Myra replied casually. Still, when she lifted her shirt slightly, a dark bruise stood out starkly against her fair skin. You call this fine? Rhodes frowned and got up. Hold on. I'll grab a towel. Myra lay back quietly, letting him tend to her. He pressed the warm, damp towel gently over her bruise for several minutes. After about 10 minutes, as he lifted it away, Myra caught his wrist. Rub it for me, she said softly. Sure. Rhodes leaned closer, propping himself on one arm while using his free hand to gently massage her bruised stomach. Myra closed her eyes, visibly relaxed by the warmth of his palm. She liked the feeling. Strong but careful, firm but comforting. Unfortunately, the peaceful moment didn't last. A knock came at the door. Though nothing inappropriate had happened, Myra instinctively sat up and adjusted her clothes. Just the idea of someone seeing her come out of the same room as Rhodes this late made her feel oddly self-conscious. "Who is it?" Rhodes asked. With his usual lack of tact, he flung the door open, glanced around, and saw no one at eye level. Then an elderly, cheerful voice called up. "Down here." Rhodes looked down. "Oh. Master, what are you doing here?" Myra lightly tapped him on the back. "Don't be rude." Mikarov's white beard curled as he smiled. "What do you mean, what am I doing here? Didn't you ask to send for backup from the guild?" "Right." Rhodes blinked. He had asked for help, but everything had gone so smoothly since then that he'd honestly forgotten. Judging by the look on his face, Mikarov pieced it together but asked anyway. "How's Riza doing?" "She's hurt, but stable. That room over there." Rhodes pointed. "I'll take you." Not that he needed to. Despite the late hour, everyone was still up and hadn't fully relaxed. The master's knock had already drawn attention, and people were beginning to peek out of their rooms and say hello. Rhodes, for his part, silently sighed in relief. Because judging by everyone's reactions, the soundproofing in these rooms clearly wasn't very good. Mikarov's eyes softened as he scanned the group and confirmed none of his children were seriously hurt. Then, his expression turned more serious. "So, who exactly had the gall to kidnap Riza?" Everyone took turns explaining what had happened. "The R system." "Seagrain? The Etherian cannon?" Mikarov's expression darkened as he processed the details. He actually used Etherian? The mere thought sent a chill down his spine. What if that blast had hit the children directly? And to think, one of the council's own members had betrayed them. No wonder Fairy Tale was constantly targeted. Wait a minute. Mikarov rubbed his beard in confusion. Didn't Yajima say that Seagrain was usually the one defending Fairy Tale at council meetings? Something didn't add up. Why would someone like that be working with such dangerous magic? Still, with a heavy sigh, Mikarov chuckled. "Well, at least you're all safe. That's what matters." It was unbelievable. Something this massive had just been resolved. By rights, this ordeal was the kind of thing that would count as an S-class mission. Maybe even SS-class. The only shame was that no one had officially commissioned the request. But even if someone had, Myra and Rhodes probably wouldn't have accepted it. What Makarov didn't realize was that Rhodes' thoughts had shifted. After witnessing the power of the mountain dragon, he had begun to seriously consider teaming up with Myra for an official S-class mission. He'd always refused before, partly because he didn't feel strong enough. And partly because there was never a financial need. But now, with the savings he and Myra had built up, completing even the lowest tier S-class request could give them a real head start on their dreams, building a home together, buying a ring, maybe even holding a wedding ceremony. For Rhodes, that temptation was real. And growing. Even when he was tending to Myra's bruises earlier, the idea had taken root in his mind. Still, he reminded himself to wait. At the very least, he wanted to meet the friend the mountain dragon mentioned before making any big decisions. And besides, Myra's opinion came first. Mikarov, meanwhile, noticed something else. Inside one of the rooms, two people were quietly wiping their tears. A dark-skinned boy sat on the ground, sobbing loudly. "What's going on in there?" the guild master asked. "They're my old friends," Riza explained softly. "We were all trapped in the Tower of Heaven. They were manipulated for 8 long years. They only just learned the truth." Mikarov's eyes softened. They were all victims. Children who had suffered far too much. Then Riza took a deep breath and looked at him seriously. "Master, I'd like to invite them to join Fairy Tale." Chapter 402, Prosthetic Eye of course. Makarov said without hesitation. "If they're willing, Fairy Tale will welcome them with open arms." "Shok, Simon, Milyana, Wally. What do you all think?" Riza turned to her old companions, gently asking for their thoughts. Wally looked surprised. "Fairy Tale? Us?" Milyana's eyes sparkled. "That's the most passionate guild, meow." Shok, still wiping away his tears, looked up. "Big Sisters Guild. Wait, hold on." Simon said, the calmest among them. "We're happy you'd even say that." "Really, we are. But it's all a bit sudden. We're not ready. At least, let us take a little time to think it through." Their world had just been upended. The place they lived for 8 years was gone. The dream they had followed was a lie. They were all feeling lost and unsure of what lay ahead. They didn't know what kind of life waited for them outside. Making a decision now would be too rushed. Mirza gave a soft smile. "You're right. I spoke too quickly. Let's rest for tonight and talk again tomorrow." Suddenly Julia raised her hand with a resolve. Juvia has made up her mind. Juvia wants to join Fairy Tale. After a brief pause, she looked at Makarov nervously. Is that okay? I approve. Makarov replied with a warm smile. Didn't I say back then? If you have nowhere to go, you're always welcome at Fairy Tale. Yay. Juvia clutched the pendant on her chest, radiant with joy. Gray-sama, Juvia has joined Fairy Tale. Ah. Yeah? Gray blinked, unsure how to react. Congratulations? Should we celebrate? Myra offered kindly. Master, you must be tired from traveling all this way. Would you like something to eat? I wouldn't mind. Makarov chuckled, rubbing his beard. A drink would make it even better. Myra playfully puffed her cheeks before grinning. Alright, since you came all the way here. Normally, this resort hotel would have provided late-night snacks, and several food stalls nearby stayed open until midnight. But because of the commotion, everything had shut down early. If they wanted to eat, they'd have to make do on their own. Luckily, Mirza always traveled heavy, and Rhodes had come well prepared. The group gathered by the beach, setting up a simple campfire and makeshift grill. Everyone pitched in, laughing, chatting, and slowly letting their stress melt away. Rhodes summoned one of his crabs, who cheerfully scuttled into the sea to fish. Before long, it returned proudly with 2 giant crabs clutched in its claws and dropped them at Rhodes' feet. Crab-catching crabs? Rhodes blinked. TSK. You guys really can't help fighting your own kind. He shook his head and sighed dramatically. Well, I'll end your suffering quickly. Myra, should we steam these or boil them? They're huge. Myra exclaimed. Mirza confidently reached for her luggage. Don't worry. I have the perfect steamer for this. Watching the others expertly prepare the food, Rhodes found himself shedding a tear. Not from emotion, but from the mouth-watering scent. His stomach rumbled in approval. 12 people and 1 cat. It made for a lively little beach party. As he cracked open a crab leg, Rhodes glanced at Makarov and asked. Master, last time you assigned Tano to Levy, and Lucy to Natsu. Shouldn't I be the one mentoring the newcomers this time? He puffed up his chest a little. I haven't had my fair shot at being a proper Fairy Tale senior. Lucy frowned. What do you mean assigned me to Natsu? That sounds way weirder than it should. Prue. Added Plu, her Canis Minor celestial spirit, standing proudly with its hands on its hips in full agreement with her tone. Rhodes whistled and called Warm over to play with Blue. Happy, meanwhile, was too busy to join them. Miliana had latched onto him and refused to let go. She kept feeding him whatever he asked for with sparkles in her eyes. As someone who once viewed her as an enemy, Happy had been wary at first. But now that they were allies, he quickly adjusted and enjoyed the attention. Warm and Plu, however? They weren't so lucky. Strangers didn't get the royal treatment. Makarov sipped from his wine gourd and asked casually. So who are you hoping to take on? I'm not picky. Rhodes said, smug. Anyone's fine. Juvia? Come on, I'm not that shameless. Gray rolled his eyes. He'd clearly be the one looking after Juvia, since she'd practically attached herself to him already. We'll sort it out when we're back at the guild. Makarov replied with a laugh. Most of them haven't even decided yet. Some might follow Urza. You might get left out again. Don't jinx it. Rhodes scowled and stuffed a whole chunk of crab leg in his mouth. Then he shamelessly snatched Makarov's wine cup and downed the rest in one gulp. Hey! The old man cried, lunging too late. That was all I had left. He turned to Myra, seeking justice. You saw that, didn't you? Tell him that was mine. Myra, without even looking up, calmly split a piece of crab meat. Half for herself, half into Rhodes' mouth. And smiled sweetly. Did you say something? I didn't see anything. Makarov looked mournfully at the starry sky. Rhodes, meanwhile, munched on crab meat contentedly. Then a thought struck him. Oh right. Simon. I know someone who can help with your eye. She uses sky dragon magic and can heal old injuries. If you'd like, I can introduce you. You mean Wendy? Mirza chimed in. That's right. And if you also talk to poorly Uzuka, she might be able to make a replacement eye for you too. For real? Wally and Shu exclaimed in unison, eyes wide. Simon blinked. That's possible? Mirza nodded with conviction. Absolutely. Wendy's magic is incredible. She could definitely help. Miliana clutched Happy with both arms and jumped with joy. Mirza-chan would never lie to us. That's amazing, Simon. Your eyes can be fixed. Recover. Simon muttered, voice low with emotion. His fingers unconsciously brushed over the eye patch in the cold edge of the metal plate beneath his jaw. If there was a chance to live without them, to no longer hide his wounds, how could he not be moved? Rhodes blinked, startled. Wait, even eyes can be replaced? Lucy gave him a look. Didn't you suggest the treatment in the first place? Why are you so surprised now? I knew about healing magic. Not that level of medical magic. Mirza gently touched the corner of her left eye, the expression on her face calm. This eye of mine is artificial. What? Rhodes and Lucy said in near unison, stunned. They had traveled together for a while, but neither had ever suspected. Her gaze had always seemed perfectly normal, resolute, piercing, full of strength. Never once had it appeared mechanical or lacking life. Yes, Mirza said softly. I lost it when I escaped from the Tower of Heaven as a child. It was poor Lee Uzuka who crafted the prosthetic and performed the operation. I can see as clearly with it as I could before. She looked down for a moment, then added with a small, almost wistful smile. Back then, it couldn't produce tears. But now, it does. Everyone went quiet for a second. The unspoken weight of her journey, the pain she had carried alone, hung briefly in the air. But Mirza didn't show shame or sadness. She stood tall, and in her steady voice was the warmth of someone reaching out a hand to someone who once stood where she had. Simon, she said gently. You don't have to wear those scars forever. You can move forward. You deserve that chance. Across the fire, Gray watched Mirza speak with such calm strength. A faint smile formed at the corner of his mouth. Juvia noticed instantly, her heart practically melting at the sight. Gray Sama smiled. Because of Mirza's kindness. He likes strong, caring women. I must work harder. Chapter 403, The council is gone. The next morning, when Rhodes woke up, the sun was already shining brightly. He had made quite a ruckus the previous night and only managed 2 or 3 hours of sleep. The exhaustion from yesterday still weighed heavily on him, and even now, he felt like he could doze off again if he just closed his eyes. Myra was already up and dressed, wearing a pajama set similar in design to Rose's, though in a different color. When she saw Rhodes's dazed and sleepy expression, her heart ached a little. Want to sleep in a bit more? She asked gently. Rhodes sat up on the bed and rubbed his face to wake himself. No. I've got too much to deal with today. He started listing the responsibilities weighing on him. There was the issue with the 3 ravens. Although they were dangerous criminals, he'd gone a bit overboard with his attacks and would need to explain himself. He also needed to dispatch one of his crabs back to the Tower of Heaven to survey the scene and possibly search for any traces of Jal. Then there was the matter of the Magic Council. They'd likely show up today, so it might be better to take the initiative and file a report himself. Especially about the usage of Etherian and the traitors' involvement. And finally, there was the issue of what to do about Riz's former companions. Just thinking about it all gave Rhodes a headache. He held out his arms and said playfully, "Where's my good morning kiss?" "I already gave it to you," Myra said with a wink. "While you were still asleep." "That doesn't count. That's sneaky. You kissed me in secret. I want to return the kiss." "You're so childish," Myra teased, walking over and placing a light kiss on his forehead. Rhodes pulled her into a hug, resting his head against her waist with a contented sigh before finally dragging himself up to wash and get ready. The two left the room together. "You're heading out already?" Mirza asked when she saw them in the hallway. "Simon and the others left earlier by boat." "Already?" Rhodes raised an eyebrow. "When?" "Not long after the feast," Mirza said. Though there was a touch of melancholy in her voice, she didn't seem heartbroken. They spent most of their lives inside the tower. Now they want to see the world with their own eyes before deciding how they want to live from now on. Myra glanced at Mirza with concern. "Are you okay with that?" Mirza smiled gently. "I saw them off properly. They're strong people. I believe they'll be fine." Rhodes, however, thought to himself that they should have at least taken a crash course in literacy and basic survival skills. Still, this was the kind of world where mages often dove into action before planning things out. Very few were as cautious as he was. Then again, they were all mages. They'd survive. "What about Simon?" Rhodes asked. "Didn't he want to stay the most? I thought we agreed to help him heal his eye and wounds." "Simon had his reasons for leaving," Mirza explained. "He's still searching for his missing sister. And Wally has a brother as well." But the truth ran deeper. They'd decided that staying close might only bring back painful memories for Mirza. Giving her space and giving themselves time to find their own paths was their way of moving forward. Myra tilted her head. "Wouldn't it be easier to ask everyone to help with the search?" Mirza shook her head. "They want to learn to stand on their own now. Not live for others or rely on others, at least until they've figured out their new way of life. That's the freedom they're seeking." Rhodes sighed inwardly. It was probably the aftermath of being manipulated and controlled for so many years. Maybe they were reacting out of trauma. Time would heal that. Or maybe they'd need real therapy. Either way, all he could do now was wish them the best. Though he didn't feel hungry, Rhodes ate something simple before heading to talk to the hotel manager about compensation for the damages caused. That's when he learned it wasn't just Myra's room that needed repairs. Apparently, the underground amusement hall had also taken quite a beating. Simon and his companions had broken a few things during their mission to rescue Urza. Sho had used his card magic to seal the tourists and staff present into playing cards, which caused a fair amount of panic at the time. All of that needed to be addressed now. Apologies had to be made one by one. Fortunately, a few of the tourists didn't file complaints, likely because a certain blonde mage had offered them something comforting while she herself had been tied up. "Lucy, I never imagined you'd go to such great lengths for the guild," Rhodes said with a dramatic sniff, placing a hand over his heart. "Truly moving. You have my vote for Best Newcomer of the Year." Lucy covered her face in embarrassment. "Can we not talk about that again? It's humiliating." Gray, standing nearby with a serious face, said bluntly. "It was reckless to let that many people see you like that. You are the last person who gets to talk about being dressed appropriately," Lucy yelled, pointing at him. "At least put a shirt on first." Juvia narrowed her eyes at Lucy. "To think you'd go so far just to get Graysama's attention. How indecent." Lucy flushed and shouted back. "I wasn't trying anything like that. Take it up with him." Rhodes had already grown used to this kind of daily chaos. He left the others to bicker and wandered down to the beach. There, he began flattening the hill he'd built the day before and released his summoned crabs back into the sea. He spent most of the morning dealing with little tasks. Tidying up, apologizing to staff, and coordinating repairs. By midday, the group finally took a break and began preparing for lunch. That's when Makarov returned. Hurried and unusually grim. "Master, how did it go?" Rhodes asked. Makarov had taken Rhodes's advice to proactively contact the Magic Council. But judging by the look on his face now, the outcome hadn't been good. The old man didn't sugarcoat it. "Pack your bags. We're heading back to the guild. Immediately." "What the heck, old man?" Notsa shouted. "We've only used 1 day of our 3-day vacation voucher." Lucy also looked disappointed but didn't dare argue out loud. "Did the council hold us responsible?" Urza asked seriously. Makarov's expression turned grave. "No. The council's headquarters was destroyed." Everyone froze. "What? But the Etherian blast happened yesterday," Lucy exclaimed. Urza's mind immediately jumped to the prime suspect. Seagrain. "No. Gel. Was it him? Did he really go that far?" Makarov shook his head. "We don't have the details yet. But the situation is severe. There are casualties. Some council members have been seriously injured." The mood turned heavy. Even Natsu had gone quiet. Makarov continued, issuing firm instructions. "Urza, Myra. Take everyone back to the guild right away. Until I return, I'm entrusting the guild to you two." "Yes, master." Urza nodded immediately. Myra followed suit with a reassuring smile. Makarov looked toward Gray next. "You'll help with Juvia's formal registration. Show her around the guild and help her get settled." "Yeah." Gray scratched his head, clearly thinking this was going to be a hassle, but with Makarov staring him, there was no way he could refuse. "Rhodes, you're coming with me. The Regional Guild Alliance is calling an emergency meeting. We'll head over directly." "Got it." Rhodes replied simply, no need for more words. The destruction of the Magic Council's headquarters wasn't just another scandal, it was a catastrophic incident, the likes of which hadn't been seen in years. It could shake the entire foundation of the magic world. Rhodes had always found the council to be rigid and frustrating. They often acted high and mighty, their judgments seemingly out of touch. Sometimes, it felt like their interventions caused more harm than good. But even so, those were isolated cases. On the whole, the council had done far more good. They were the ones who fought tirelessly to eliminate dark guilds, black magic cults, and criminal syndicates. In fact, among all forces in the magical world, it was the council that drew the most hatred from underground factions. Not even regular guilds attracted that much malice. And the council endured that pressure in silence. With their headquarters now obliterated, chaos was inevitable. The ripple effects wouldn't just shake the upper echelons of the magic world. Ordinary citizens, those far removed from the politics and power struggles, would suffer the most from the instability. To make things worse, one of the main suspects behind the attack was a councillor himself. Several other members might now face scrutiny. Internal investigations would be unavoidable. The reformation and selection of new councillors would require extreme caution and likely take a long time. Then there was the problem of the 10 wizard saints, the 10 holy mages. This honorary title was meant to distinguish the 10 most powerful wizards on the entire continent of Ishkar. But now, 2 of those 10, Jose Porla, a phantom lord, and a man once known as Seagrain, who was actually Gel, had revealed themselves to be dangerous individuals. That alone was enough to severely damage the reputation of the title and everything it stood for. Jose had started a guild war without council permission, risking countless innocent lives. In many ways, his recklessness was no less dangerous than Gel's deception and destruction. Until the Magic Council could regain its footing, the responsibility of maintaining order would fall to the local guild alliances. They would have to act quickly, responsibly, and decisively to prevent further collapse. Chapter 404, I'm a Serious Person. The destruction of the Magic Council's headquarters was a seismic event that sent shockwaves through the entire magical world. In response, the Guild Alliance summoned an emergency summit, and this time, nearly every guild master attended, far more than in previous meetings. Interestingly, the smaller and mid-sized guilds appeared even more proactive than the major ones. Their limited resources meant they were especially vulnerable in times of crisis, and they were desperate for reassurance that the Alliance could still provide a sense of order and protection. By the time Makarov and Rhodes arrived, it was already late afternoon. They had traveled quite a distance, and nearly every other guildmaster had already taken their seat. Given the gravity of the situation, formal greetings and meals were skipped entirely. The participants headed straight into the council chamber. For once, Makarov shed his usual laid-back attitude and stood at the front with a rare solemnity. As one of the most respected guild masters, he took on the responsibility of presiding over the meeting. Rhodes, ever the reliable second-in-command, pulled a chair over for Makarov, then quietly stepped back into a corner to stay out of the spotlight. Not that he could really disappear. After all, the last meeting had ended with him and his friends knocking lullaby into next week. That dramatic display of strength still lingered in the minds of many. Several guild masters couldn't help but glance over at him, more than a little cautious. Despite his short stature, Makarov stood confidently atop his chair, cleared his throat, and quickly gained everyone's attention. As you all know, Makarov began, his voice firm. The council's headquarters era was destroyed. Fortunately, we may have a lead on the culprit. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Curious and wary eyes turned toward him. Makarov gestured. Rhodes, go ahead. He believed it would be best for someone who had witnessed the events firsthand to explain. Makarov had heard the story from the younger members, but second-hand details wouldn't carry as much weight. Rhodes didn't hesitate. It wasn't his first time addressing a room full of powerful guild leaders, and he wasn't the type to be rattled easily. Stepping forward, he spoke clearly and calmly, recounting the details of the Tower of Heaven. I'll start with the core of it, he said. We've suspected for a long time that there was a traitor within the council. That traitor was one of their own. Councillor Seagrain. A shocked outcry erupted throughout the chamber. A councillor? A spy? Some guild masters were too stunned to speak, while others immediately demanded proof. Rhodes summarized the situation with practiced ease, glossing over some of the more sensitive details, such as the mountain dragon summoning or personal ties to Riz's companions, to keep the report focused and digestible. In short, he explained, Gel, under the alias of Seagrain, infiltrated the council with one purpose, to obtain enough magical power to activate the R system, a forbidden resurrection magic, and find someone to serve as a human sacrifice. He paused to let the words sink in. It's possible he had dealings with dark guilds or Zeref-worshipping cults, but we can't confirm that yet. What we do know is this, another counselor named Alter Milkovich appeared unusually close to him. That connection warrants investigation. One of the older guild masters, Goldmine, raised a hand and asked. Angel? What became of him? Rhodes's voice turned more solemn. We don't know. He was critically injured in the final battle and fell into the sea. With the Etherian blast disturbing the waters and whipping up a storm, we lost track of him. His current status is unknown. The room fell into a heavy silence. The implications of Rhodes's words hit them like a falling meteor, the R system, Zeref's magic, the loss of the council headquarters, and a traitor among the 10 wizard saints. It was almost too much to absorb at once. And then, realization dawned across many of the guild leaders' faces. Wait a second. That name, Seagrain. No, Joel Fernandez. He wasn't just a counselor. He was also one of the 10 wizard saints, right? So, a few young mages from Fairy Tale managed to take down one of the 10 wizard saints, while Makarov himself didn't even make it to the battlefield? The mood in the chamber shifted. Many guild masters glanced at Makarov with new expressions. Some of awe, others of unease. They had always acknowledged Fairy Tale as the top guild in Fiore, but now, their strength felt almost terrifying. Even putting aside the matter of Jel, the guild also had the record of eliminating the infamous assassin squad known as the Three Trinity Ravens. If a small, ordinary guild had run into the Trinity Raven, it was likely even their guild master wouldn't have made it out alive. Where in the world had Makarov found so many prodigies? Several of those gazes now landed on Rhodes, many filled with admiration or deference. In the eyes of most here, he was the de facto commander of the whole operation. Rhodes, however, felt only regret. With Era, the Magic Council headquarters out of commission, the bounty or recognition for taking down the Trinity Raven was now lost. Even if the council restructured in the future, they might not honor old merits or titles. Rhodes felt as though he'd taken a loss. Makarov wanted to chuckle at the sight, proud of his children's feats. But this was a formal meeting, not a tavern party, and he couldn't very well start bragging here. So he cleared his throat and moved the conversation forward. In any case, the incident at Era is undoubtedly connected to Jal. We'll contact the Southern Guild Alliance and ask them to monitor his movements. I suggest everyone else do the same. Of course, this wasn't the only regional alliance. There were guild federations beyond Fiori as well. Makarov expected similar emergency meetings would soon take place across the continent. With time, news would spread, and the different regions would begin exchanging intel. Now, let's get to the main issue. Makarov continued. What will the temporary shutdown of the council mean for us? And for the magical world at large? Makarov may often seem casual, but when it came to real danger, he was no fool. Calm and composed, he laid out the potential fallout. For instance, the Dark Guilds would undoubtedly become more active, emboldened by the council's collapse. Crimes involving illegal or dangerous magic could surge. With council branches in disarray across various nations, there would be a serious vacuum of authority, making Era's eventual reorganization more difficult. And in the worst-case scenario, even reputable guilds could come under attack from rogue elements. Rhodes quietly absorbed each point. As he reflected, he realized that the ones who would suffer most from this chaos weren't mages, but ordinary citizens. Of course, regular guilds weren't entirely safe either. Dark guilds often blamed them for being shut out of official jobs and held deep resentment. They believed they'd been denied fair chances, seeing the world itself as unjust. The guild leaders continued to discuss various countermeasures, proposing ideas like increasing collaboration between guilds and strengthening mutual support networks. But the most critical decision was unanimous: they needed to intensify the crackdown on dark guilds, ensuring they didn't exploit the current chaos for their own gain. Rhodes sighed inwardly. He could already see the future. He'd likely be assigned a wave of dark guild extermination missions. After all, maintaining regional stability was no small matter. Every guild had to contribute, either by funding operations or by sending their own members. Fairy Tale's funds, however, were already stretched thin, what with the recent rebuilding of their guild hall and all the expenses that came with it. So of course, they'd be contributing people. Meaning him. By the time evening rolled around, the discussions had covered dozens of topics, but still felt far from complete. With night falling, they reluctantly agreed to adjourn the meeting, take a break for dinner, and reconvene the next day with fresh minds. At the evening banquet, Makarov became the center of attention. One guild leader after another came by to toast him, offering high praise and well-meaning envy. After several rounds of drinks, the mood relaxed. Familiar faces began to gather in smaller groups to chat more freely. Rhodes had just taken a breather when he was approached by Goldmine and Master Bob. "Well now," Bob said in his usual flamboyant manner, his eyes sparkling. "A few days ago, some of your adorable fairy tale boys stopped by our guild for a visit, but you weren't among them, Rhodes. Why's that?" He rested his chin on his hand and fluttered his eyelashes at him. A chill ran down Rhodes' spine. Goosebumps prickled his arms. You know how it is," he replied awkwardly, scratching the back of his head. "Things have been hectic lately, and our dear master has a habit of dumping all the work on us." He didn't even try to save Makarov's dignity in front of these two. It wasn't worth it. Makarov, for his part, was too busy enjoying his wine to care. "Oh, such a shame," Bob said with a pout. Then, with a dramatic flourish, he reached into his pocket and pulled out several small tickets. "Here, these are VIP passes to our bar. Bring some friends next time you visit." Thank you," Rhodes replied, confused but polite as he accepted them. They looked like ordinary pieces of paper, but for some reason, his palms felt hot just holding them. "I'm a serious person." Chapter 405, Lost Goldmine chuckled, casting a glance at Bob. "You trying to poach people again?" Makarov didn't seem the least bit concerned. If someone wanted to steal Rhodes away, they'd have to win over my Jane too. And that wasn't happening. The old friends laughed and joked, but eventually, the conversation circled back to the pressing topic, the destruction of Era. "Any word on Yajima?" Goldmine asked. "I was just about to ask you," Bob said with a tilt of the head. Both of them turned to Makarov. After all, he was closest to Yajima. "Relax," Makarov said, swirling his drink, his cheeks faintly flushed from the alcohol. Yaji's got more brains than all of us put together. He'll come through just fine, even if everything's falling apart. Truthfully, Makarov had already reached out to the remnants of the council that morning. Yajima had been among the wounded, but fortunately, his injuries were minor and he wasn't in any real danger. Still, he couldn't get through to him directly. After a moment of thought, Makarov decided to be honest. Half the counselors are undergoing treatment, and they're all likely to face investigation afterward. It'll be tough to reach him anytime soon. Goldmine sighed. It's tough being a counselor. Still, Yajima lasted longer than most, though I'd say half of that was just cleaning up after you. Bob added cheerfully. He's always been so gentle, that's why we love him. Makarov exhaled deeply. He might take this chance to finally retire. I remember he once said he wanted to open a restaurant. Goodman recalled. But if that happens, Fairy Tale might be in trouble without him there. Goodman turned to Rhodes with a grin. So, Rhodes, what do you say, want to join our guild before that happens? Bob nudged him with a smirk. You sly dog. Weren't you just complaining about me trying to steal talent? The guild summit continued for another 3 days. The tropics gradually shifted. From responding to the immediate aftermath of year's collapse, to long-term recovery planning, and even a debate on reforming the selection criteria for the 10 wizard saints and counselors. Even though they were just a regional alliance, they still had the authority to submit formal recommendations. The consensus? Future wizard saints should be evaluated not just on magical prowess, but also on their integrity and service to the magical community. And counselors? Power was meaningless without strong character and sound judgment. When the final day arrived, Rhodes diligently organized all the meeting notes, then handed them to a mage who specialized in copy magic to print dozens of copies. He also compiled all of the key resolutions into a formal summary on behalf of the Alliance. The letter was addressed to the Kingdom of Fiori and the temporary council leadership, and he passed it around for all the guild masters to sign. As the event drew to a close, someone brought up a new idea. Why not appoint Rhodes as the permanent secretary for future summits? He might not be flashy, but he was thorough, reliable, and organized. Which was more than most guild leaders could say for themselves. Several masters agreed to test it out at the next gathering. After all, they'd rather fight dragons than draft a report. By the time Rhodes and Makarov returned to Magnolia, it was already September 20th. The Fairy Tale Guild Hall had been fully renovated in their absence. All the debris, broken timber, and leftover materials from the reconstruction had been cleared away. Compared to the old days, when anyone could just push open the large guild doors and walk straight in, Fairy Tale's new headquarters had added a bit of flair. A surrounding wall enclosed a cozy courtyard now transformed into an open-air tavern. As Makarov and Rhodes entered through the front gate, they were greeted by a lively scene. Half of the 16 outdoor tables were already occupied, some by guild members, but most by locals from Magnolia enjoying the sunshine and drinks. As expected, the tavern had hired new waitresses while they were gone, complete with freshly issued uniforms. The new outfits featured bold, chest-high skirts that were definitely attention-grabbing. The ever-flirtatious Makarov practically froze in place, as if gravity itself was dragging him toward the two lovely waitresses outside. With a wide grin that was far from subtle, he offered a rather suggestive smile. Master, you're back. You must be tired from the journey. Welcome home, Master. And you too, Rhodes. Not tired at all, not one bit. Makarov said with a laugh, rubbing his hands together. Ah, this guild really is paradise. Please try acting like a responsible guild master, at least for once. Rhodes said dryly, greeting the waitresses more normally. Good afternoon. Is Myra inside? She sure is. One of the girls chirped. We saw her just now. The two lovebirds reunited. She is inside, and she looks so gorgeous in the new outfit. Rhodes took the teasing in stride, completely unfazed. Of course she looks gorgeous. Myra looks stunning in any outfit. Eek, so sweet. Leaving the smitten guild master behind, Rhodes walked into the guild hall by himself. Oi, Rhodes. Max? Rhodes glanced toward the newly built shop counter. So the store is officially open? Want to take a look? We've got figurines of you and Myra. 3,000 jewels each. You actually made those? Rhodes picked up a figure of Myra and inspected it. The material felt like hand-carved wood, the paint job a little uneven, and the craftsmanship was, well, enthusiastic, if nothing else. Could it be that Loki helped make these with her magic? I personally recommend this one. Max held up a figure of Lucy in her usual blue skirt and white blouse. Just press this button right here on the base. Click. With a light press, the figure's outfit popped off in several pieces, revealing a detailed set of undergarments underneath. Max gave the figure a little shake. This one's 2,000 jewels more than the others, but for some reason it's our best seller. You really don't know why? Rhodes sighed and carefully placed the Myra figure back on the counter. As tempting as it was to collect a commission off these, it looked like copyright or portrait rights weren't a thing around here. Not even a little tempted to buy one for yourself? Max, still trying to push a sale, leaned forward eagerly. At the very least, you should get Myra's. Jet and Troy both bought Levy's, and Alzek secretly bought Bisca's. You just expose their secrets like that? Rhodes gave him a look of complete disdain. What happened to professional discretion? He waved a hand dismissively. Besides, I don't need to buy a figure. I can collect the real Myra. Hard plastic dolls couldn't compare to the real deal. Myra could smile, hug, blush, and argue. That was what made her special. With a flick of his hand and no hesitation, Rhodes turned and walked off, completely uninterested in Max's collection of half-baked figurines. The guild had changed in more ways than just the shop. A performance stage had been added, and a gym and game room now stood where storage used to be. These renovations had started before their last mission, but they had only just opened for use in the past few days. Rhodes didn't stop to admire the upgrades. Instead, he made a beeline straight for the counter, taking long strides until he reached his destination. And wrapped Myra in a warm hug. He didn't hold on for long. Myra got flustered easily in public, and he didn't want to embarrass her too much. But still. She was here. Soft smile. Familiar warmth. She had changed into the guild's new uniform, and Rhodes took a moment to admire her without blinking. The light blue-gray eyes he knew so well still sparkled just the same. I'm back, he said, holding her hands. Welcome back. Myra replied with a gentle smile. You've worked hard. And? Her eyes glinted mischievously. Was Lucy's figure pretty? Rhodes's face immediately fell into a tragic expression. Wait. Had he entered her line of sight the moment he walked in? Then again, he supposed it meant she'd been keeping an eye out for him. He sighed, dramatically wilting. I've been thinking about you every single day, and that's the first thing you say? Myra puffed her cheeks. So what if you did? I thought about you every single day too. Oh no. Rhodes felt like he just lost the match. Chapter 406, Loke is here again. So many requests this time? Myra asked as she took the thick stack of mission requests Rhodes had brought back. Yeah. Rhodes replied. This is a critical period. We need to crack down hard on any dark guilds that dare to stir up trouble. Then let's get them posted right away. Myra said, grabbing a few sheets of parchment. She began copying the missions one by one into the proper guild commission format. Sis Myra. I want a roast chicken and a dozen beers upstairs. Came a shout from above. It was Loki's voice, loud and carefree. Since the guild was rebuilt, the old rule about avoiding the second floor unless you were authorized had been scrapped. Master Makarov decided that restricting movement like that was bad for guild bonding. However, the rule still stood that S-class requests, now posted upstairs, could only be taken under the lead of an S-class wizard. Got it. Rhodes called back on Myra's behalf and made his way to fetch the drinks. As soon as he got upstairs, he was met with a scowl. Why are you here? We wanted to see the waitresses. Warren muttered, clearly disappointed. Rhodes thudded the tray of drinks down hard on the table. Wow, you're not even pretending anymore? How's that my fault? Warren shrugged. Look at Loki, Sally, and Izzy in those new uniforms. They only wear them 2 days a week. Except the first week when they wore them every day. Who wants to be served by you? Rhodes gave him a flat look. Good to know how shallow you are. But before he could say more, another voice rang out. Roast chicken for table 3 on the second floor. It was a girl's voice this time, and before Warren could even identify it, his posture snapped upright like a soldier at inspection. Rhodes tilted his head at the familiar tone and turned to look. Ursa? You're back? Ursa Scarlet stepped forward with a tray in hand, giving Warren a smile so professional it could have come from a restaurant hostess. Thank you. Warren squeaked, eyes darting nervously but sitting ramrod straight. Seeing her in a waitress uniform didn't surprise Rhodes at all. So, you really took the part-time job? I thought the new uniforms were cute. Ursa explained, twirling once for full effect. Myra said if I worked here for a full week, I could keep the dress. She seemed proud of the outfit, an adorable break from her usual armors. Most of her gear had been damaged during the battle with Jell and was still off for repairs, so working a side job wasn't a bad way to pass time. Rhodes realized immediately that this was definitely Myra's idea. Clever move. Looks great on you. Rhodes gave her a thumbs up. Keep it up. To be honest, Ursa looked amazing. She was easily as beautiful as Myra. But that only made Rhodes want to hurry back downstairs. You're not heading to the backyard? Myra asked as Rhodes returned to her side. The pool's finally open. Levy, Lucy, and Bisca are back there in swimsuits. Lots of cute girls, you know. Rhodes grabbed a pen and joined her at the table, helping copy down the remaining requests. Myra worked from the front of the list, and he tackled it from the back. He responded seriously. I'm not interested in swimsuits. Oh, really? Myra said with a teasing smile. Didn't someone stare really hard the other day? I mean it. Rhodes replied with a nod. Unless you're the one wearing it. Myra paused to think for a moment. Then. Should we change physical training to swimming from now on? Rhodes immediately agreed. Yes. Absolutely yes. Myra gave him a playful eye roll. What are you even thinking? How are we supposed to train like that? She handed the copied mission slips to him. Go post them. Rhodes strolled over to the bulletin board and saw the familiar sight of Nab Lazaro, the guild's most famous loiterer. Nab. He greeted dryly. Staying busy? Ah, of course. Nab replied with a nod. For him, standing around staring at the mission board was considered staying busy. Rhodes posted all the commissions at the top section of the board. Taking on dark guilds was no joke. Even if many were weak, every one of them was dangerous in their own way. If someone picked one up later, he'd have to make sure they were reminded to form a proper team. When he returned to the counter and watched the beautiful waitresses bustling around in their new uniforms, Rhodes suddenly asked, Do you think I should quit working as a server? Myra looked up, surprised. Why? Well, we have enough staff now. And honestly, I feel like I don't quite fit in anymore. Myra paused for a moment and then clapped her hands together in realization. Oh. I know. It's because everyone's wearing uniforms, and you're not. That's not really the issue. Rhodes replied dryly. Why not? Come on, try this on. Myra said with a giggle, pulling out a paper bag. It definitely felt like she'd prepared it ahead of time. Rhodes reached inside and pulled out the clothing. It was the same bright red color as Myra's outfit. But when he unfolded it completely, it wasn't just the color. It was the exact same style. He held the little skirt up in front of him and gave Myra a helpless look. You really want me to wear this? Just try it on, just a little bit. Myra said, laughing and covering her mouth. Rhodes folded the outfit right back up and tapped her forehead lightly with his finger. Yeah, no thanks. Ow. Myra rubbed her forehead with a smile. Actually, I did plan to have something made for you, but I think it's better if you switch to wearing a suit and act as the store manager instead. Now that sounds much better. Rhodes nodded. He spent most of his time managing guild affairs anyway. Calculating income and expenses, organizing missions. When he got free time, he wanted to read or train. Being the store manager of the tavern side of the guild wasn't a bad idea at all. It even felt like a bit of a promotion. And once he had a clearer picture of the guild's finances, maybe he'd give himself a raise. Myra really had thought it through. Let's run it by Master Mikhailov later. Myra suggested, eyes sparkling. She was happy to plan things this way because she believed it truly suited him. The two of them finished copying the last few commissions and posted them on the board. Just then, Kana walked by, tore off one of the freshly posted sheets, and declared, I'll take this one. Myra glanced at the paper and asked, By yourself? Kana waved it off casually. It's just a dark guild with 9 members. Kana was strong enough to handle a small-time dark guild on her own, but Myra was still concerned, especially since Kana tended to be drunk more often than not. It's better to team up with someone. Myra advised gently. That way, someone can look after you. How am I supposed to find a teammate? Kana muttered, frowning. I'm in a hurry to earn more money for drinks. Her eyes slid slyly to Rhodes. How about lending me your boyfriend for a few days? Rhodes sighed. You're really pushing your luck with that kind of talk. Kana grinned. Who's going to get hit, me or you? Alright, enough teasing. Myra intervened, still smiling. Rhodes has been working hard lately. He deserves a break. Try thinking seriously about who you want to team up with. Kana looked genuinely troubled for a moment, unsure. Just then, a familiar voice called out. How about teaming up with me? Everyone turned toward the sound. A stylish man in a green jacket walked up with a relaxed smile. His glasses glinted under the light. Hey. You're all lively as ever, huh? The guild looks completely different now. Loke? The three were surprised. Are you alright now? I'm good. Loke replied casually. Just needed a bit of recovery time in the celestial spirit world. I was originally dealing with something involving my girlfriend, but if Kana's in a bind, there's no way I can ignore her. But you belong to Lucy now, don't you? Kana asked. If you team up with me, won't that interfere with her summoning? I might be Lucy's celestial spirit. Loke replied. But I'm also a fairy tale wizard. And don't worry, this time I came to the human world on my own using my own magic. It won't affect Lucy's ability to summon anyone else. In that case, Kana said with a shrug. Fine by me. She turned to Myra. Is it alright if I team up with Loke, then? Myra looked toward Rhodes. Before she could speak, Rhodes stepped forward and suddenly threw a punch at Loke's face. Loke casually raised his hand and caught it. Rhodes narrowed his eyes and applied more force, but Loke didn't budge. A soft golden light shimmered from Loke's hand as he matched the strength. After a tense moment, the two simultaneously released their grips, grinning. So, you've moved on from being a holding type to a real ability user now, huh? Rhodes smirked. You feel stronger. Loke gave a relaxed smile. That's because the ring I used before was just a mass-produced copy. Now I've regained my original power. Chapter 407, Rhodes, the newcomer you want is here. Kana and Loke weren't the type to rush into battle without thinking. Naturally, the two of them could easily take care of a small dark guild together. Lucy really found herself a gem. His magic power is seriously strong. Rhodes commented. Even after a brief exchange, he already had a good sense of Loke's strength. Loke came to the human world on his own power, so his strength is still a bit limited. If Lucy had summoned him directly. Myra paused, then smiled. The restrictions might have been even worse. That's a bit harsh on Lucy. Although it's not exactly wrong. Rhodes said, trying to soften the words without disagreeing. Lucy's current magic reserves really couldn't keep up with the Zodiac Spirit's full potential. They chatted while finishing up some minor guild tasks. Before long, half the day had flown by. Didn't the master come back with you? Myra asked. Why hasn't he come in yet? Rhodes frowned. He was hanging around outside when we returned, but it shouldn't take this long. Just then, Lockie entered from the courtyard. Hey, Lockie, have you seen the master? Lockie nodded. He had a few drinks out front and then took off in a hurry. Looked like he suddenly remembered something important. Important? Rhodes raised an eyebrow. Everything important should be in my notebook. If it wasn't in there, then it probably wasn't urgent. He figured Mikrev would tell him later if it really mattered. As the sun began to set, Levy and Lucy strolled in from the backyard. It looked like they had spent the whole afternoon swimming. The two were laughing like a pair of carefree high schoolers. Their damp hair hung loosely over their shoulders. Even though they had changed out of their swimsuits, they somehow looked even more captivating. Lucy, in particular, deserved to be scolded a bit. It was one thing for Levy's collar to be out of place, since she wasn't showing anything. But Lucy's shirt was hanging half open. That was just asking too much from the guys in the guild. Jet and Roy followed them in, walking from the backyard into the tavern. Rhodes, you're back? Yeah. He replied. Although two gorgeous girls were standing in front of him, he didn't let his gaze wander. I've been stuck in strategy meetings with the master for days. Total headache. Meanwhile, it looks like you all have been enjoying yourselves. Well, it's been scorching lately, and the pool's finally open. It was too tempting. Lucy said with a sheepish smile. She felt a little guilty. They'd all returned to Magnolia together, yet she and Levy had gone off to relax while Rhodes got stuck helping the master. I just finished up a mission before coming back. Levy added quickly, trying to sound more responsible. Oh, I bought this amazing novel while I was out. I'll lend it to you once Luchan finishes reading it. Really? What's it about? Rhodes asked, intrigued. It's an adventure story with a hint of mystery. The author's writing is really vivid, like you're living the adventure yourself. That's totally my type of story. I'll treat you to something to eat as thanks. Rhodes then turned to Myra. Is that alright with you? Myra rolled her eyes in a playful way. There was no reason to be jealous over something like that. Then I won't hold back. Levy grinned and started picking her favorite dish from the menu. Jet and Roy nearly choked on air. How could Rhodes say that so casually? And Levy actually agreed that quickly? It felt like Rhodes could ask her out right now and she'd say yes, unless Myra intervened first with something a little more painful. Unfair. Jet and Roy glumly ordered a round of beer and sat down, casting Rhodes bitter, betrayed looks. Lucy looked at him expectantly. Rhodes didn't hesitate. Don't look at me like that. You're not getting a free pass. Pay me back. Lucy looked stunned. Why are you treating me differently? Because I'm broke. Rhodes replied bluntly. Myra and I had to cover the damages to the hotel the other day. You need to pay your share. Even though it was mostly the fault of the Trinity Raven for wrecking the hotel, the amusement park, and causing a riot, the compensation had still fallen on their shoulders. Rhodes' already tight finances took another serious hit. I totally forgot. Lucy clutched her head with both hands, as if lightning had struck her. No wonder I felt like I had so much extra money all of a sudden. I thought I didn't need to worry about rent this month. Myra smiled gently. Don't worry. Isn't Loke working to help you out right now? Lucy blinked. Loke? When did that happen? You didn't know? Myra tilted her head, genuinely surprised. Lucy quickly checked the keyring at her waist. Her golden Leo key was still there. She held back the urge to summon him on the spot. I told him to rest a few more days, and now he's just running around on his own? Why'd he suddenly start working? Myra chuckled. He still has a few personal matters to handle in the human world. He happened to run into Kana while she was looking for a partner. Seriously? What kind of celestial spirit just does things like that on their own? Lucy muttered, though she didn't sound upset at all. After all, Loke had a full life in the human world, friends of his own, and a history even before becoming her spirit. Lucy didn't want to control that. Well, looks like I need to go find work too. She sighed. She wasn't counting on Loke's earnings. Knowing him, he might blow it all on roses and charm. Rhodes said. Actually, there are a bunch of subjugation missions posted today. You should take a look. Lucy drooped. I can't take on those missions alone. Levy tilted her head. Why not? Didn't you join Fairy Tale's strongest team? That's the problem. Lucy looked defeated. Mirza's working part-time as a waitress this week. Gray left on a job with Juvia. And Natsu. He said he didn't burn enough last time, so now he's doing special training with Happy. I'm all alone. Rhodes gave a half-smile. He probably had to take some of the blame for Natsu's current mood. After all, it was his mountain dragon form that had sent Natsu flying like a ragdoll in their last sparring match. That must have hit Natsu's pride harder than any punch. But none of that changed the fact that Rhodes still intended to collect his debts. Lucy, being the responsible type, winced and asked miserably. Miss Myra, is there a mission I can take on alone? Myra tapped her chin thoughtfully, then suddenly took out the uniform Rhodes had stashed away earlier. This is the perfect job. The waitstaff at the guild are treated very well. And I think this uniform would suit you, Lucy. I'll think about it. This time, Lucy didn't refuse outright. After all, she had been with Fairy Tale for over 2 months now. She had experienced danger, chaos, excitement. All of it. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to try something simple and normal for once. Soon after, Lucy and Levy began digging into their dinner, chatting and relaxing. But halfway through the meal, the entire guild hall suddenly fell silent. Several people behind the counter glanced up. Lucy's face froze in surprise. Levy instinctively covered her mouth. Even Myra and Rhodes looked confused. The reason was obvious. Standing at the entrance was Master Mikarov, and behind him stood an uninvited guest. It was none other than Gagiel Red Fox, the former ace of Phantom Lord and the Iron Dragon's lair. Tension swept through the guild like a cold wind. Many members immediately recognized him as the one who had helped destroy Fairy Tale's original building. Those who didn't recall him right away were quickly reminded by whispers from their companions. The tavern was dead silent. Several people were already rising from their seats, fists clenched. If it hadn't been for Makarov's presence, someone might have launched the first punch already. Seeing the heavy mood and hostile stares, Makarov smiled calmly and raised his voice. This is Gagiel. As of today, he's a member of Fairy Tale. His announcement struck like thunder. What? Master, are you serious? How can we accept someone like him? The guild erupted in protests. Shocked outbursts, angry questions, and even the sound of someone slamming the table filled the room. It wasn't just a matter of past grudges. Gagiel had attacked and injured the Shadowgear team, helped tear down their home. How could they just welcome him like nothing had happened? Chapter 408, Gagiel's mission. Alright. He only did all that under Jose's orders, and he's already been taught a lesson. By lesson, Makarov meant the beatings Gagiel had received from Rhodes a few times, which were mild, followed by much harsher ones from Mirza and Myra. Not to mention, Gagiel had also been detained by the Magic Council and regicated for over a month. Makarov still believed Gagiel was redeemable. He tried to calm everyone down. As the saying goes, yesterday's enemy can become today's friend. Gagiel's not a bad person deep down. Let's give him a chance. Juvia's been doing fine with everyone, hasn't she? But Juvia was Juvia, and Gagiel was Gagiel. Leaving aside the fact that Juvia was easy on the eyes, she hadn't done anything truly unforgivable. She'd been captured by Rhodes and Myra before the conflict even started. Apart from that bath she gave Lucy, she hadn't caused any harm. In fact, she'd even shared helpful intel about Phantom Lord. And she had sincerely apologized to Lucy afterward. Her goodwill from the beginning made a big difference. Over the past month, Juvia had stayed close to the guild. Except for her constant devotion to Grey, it was clear to almost everyone that she genuinely liked Fairy Tale. Gagiel, on the other hand, had walked in with a scowl. His demeanor was cold, even challenging. The only ones he didn't glare at were Rizza and Myra, and that didn't exactly win him any points. But since it was Master Mikarov's decision, no one could openly protest. Rhodes leaned toward Makarov and whispered. Master, have you thought about how Levy and the others might feel? Good point. Makarov admitted, scratching his head. How about I have him apologize to them privately? Let's give it some time. He knew Gagiel's attitude was as tough as his iron dragon scales. Even if he felt some regret, it was hard for him to express it. Rhodes nodded. As long as Levy and the others are okay with it, I won't make a fuss. And if we're still upset, we can settle it with a few good rounds later. At the counter, Lucy held Levy's hand and glared toward Gagiel. Levy. Levy was trembling slightly but forced herself to speak. I don't mind anymore. She said that, but the moment Gagiel's eyes met hers, Lucy could feel her shaking even more. Lucy shot Gagiel another glare. Jet and Roy stepped protectively in front of the girls, staring him down with clear hostility. Gagiel looked away, not eager to provoke a fight. At Makarov's signal, Myra retrieved the guild stamp and pressed the fairy tale mark onto Gagiel's left shoulder. It ended up just a little higher than the spot where Rhodes had his. Gagiel glanced at the emblem, then turned to Makarov. Can I go on a job now? Makarov nodded. As long as it's a mission posted on the first floor, you're free to choose. Without hesitation, Gagiel picked a request to take down a dark guild. Makarov checked the target and gave a calm nod. Be careful out there. Gagiel gave him a surprised look, nodded, and left without another word. Watching him go, Mirza spoke up. Master, while I trust your judgment, Gagiel isn't the same as Juvia. It might be wise to assign someone to keep an eye on him. Makarov hummed thoughtfully, then turned to look at Rhodes. Rhodes knew that look too well. You're not planning to dump this job on me again, are you? Makarov smiled. You always want to lead the newcomers, and you agree with my approach. Rhodes replied flatly. Every mentor wants their recruit to be a little more obedient. He recalled how, during the lullaby incident, Makarov had told Kageyama that it was the duty of seasoned members to lead wayward youths back onto the right path. But Gagiel just seemed like someone who deserved a good beating. Still, seeing the concern in Makarov's eyes, Rhodes sighed. If you really want me to, fine. I'll do it. For the sake of the guild. Makarov chuckled. Forget it. I'll make other arrangements. You've had your hands full lately. Don't push yourself. In truth, Makarov had no plans to assign anyone to keep watch over Gagiel, because he had a much more important task waiting for him. It wasn't convenient to have him get too close to Rhodes, and the same went for anyone else. That night, Myra decided to head over to Rhodes's house, and she brought Elfman with her. Good news, Myra was coming over to his house of her own accord. Bad news, she brought her younger brother. What was this situation? Myra instantly read Rhodes's expression and knew what he was thinking. I'm just here to check if your place needs a deep clean. She said casually. Things will go faster with one more person helping out. The master left a bunch of stuff behind, and I haven't had time to deal with it all lately. She just wanted to finish the cleaning quickly so Rhodes could finally get some rest. Oh. It's all of the master's fault. I knew I shouldn't have let him drink so much. Rhodes grumbled, rubbing the back of his head. The alcohol ban was for Makarov's own health, not some kind of punishment. This was Elfman's first time visiting Rhodes's house. It was a lot tidier than he had imagined. He'd thought it might look like Naz's disaster of a place. But as Elfman looked around, something else caught his attention. There were way too many picture frames and photos hanging on the walls. And nearly all of them featured his sister. Some were group shots, some were portraits, and some had clearly been clipped from old newspapers and magazines and lovingly pasted into large frames. Honestly, it looked more like Myra's room than Rhodes's. When did he even collect all these? And when had those group photos been taken? Still, Myra looked really happy in every one of them. If not for the fact that so many of the photos were from guild events and group missions, Elfman would have suspected Rhodes was either a crazy fanboy or a stalker. And those paintings, those were unmistakably Rita's work. Originally, Rita's had drawn them as fun snapshots of warm or chaotic moments in the guild. But if you looked at them with Myra and Rhodes as the central characters, and arranged them in order, you could practically trace the entire journey from the moment they met to when they fell in love. Elfman stared for a while, piecing it together. He noticed it clearly now, the way Rhodes looked at his sister had changed over time. And so had the way she looked at him. It hadn't happened all at once. They hadn't suddenly fallen into a relationship out of nowhere. The scene where Rhodes blocked a wine bottle to protect Myra looked kind of cool, but Elfman still didn't understand why it had been framed and hung on the wall. It's not that messy, just needs a quick wipe. Myra called out. Elfman, come help. On it. In their own way, the three of them worked together and cleaned the place thoroughly. Once they were finished, Rhodes walked the siblings downstairs. Elfman, with a rather knowing look, quickly made up an excuse about needing to shower and rushed off. Left alone at last, Rhodes and Myra looked at each other and hugged tightly. 3.0, nearly 4 whole days apart had felt way too long. They exchanged a few soft words that would have sounded unbearably cheesy to anyone else, and Myra was about to remind Rhodes to get some rest when he said, "Will you come with me to meet some new friends outside the city in a few days?" He gently took her hand and leaned close, taking in her scent. "After that, I want to take a higher-paying mission." "Of course," Myra answered softly, burying her face into his chest and quietly taking in the warmth of his scent. Chapter 409, Procrastination. The destruction of the Magic Council headquarters made front-page news across every major paper, not just in the Kingdom of Fiore, but throughout the entire continent of Ishgir. After all, something like this didn't just shake the wizarding world. It affected the lives of ordinary people, too. In the days that followed, citizens became more cautious when heading out. Even Goodman stopped Rhodes on the street to ask him about the incident. But thankfully, this was Magnolia. Whenever locals saw 2 or 3 rowdy wizards arguing or suddenly throwing fists in the street, they didn't panic. Instead, they felt reassured. After all, this was the home of Fairy Tale, the #1 guild in all of Fiore. Maybe it was a strange way to feel secure, but the townsfolk liked gathering in Fairy Tale's tavern when they had nothing to do. It made them feel safer somehow. As a result, the bar was booming with business. Rhodes, now officially the tavern's manager, had fully stepped into his new role. Mikrav even approved a special half-day off for both him and Myra so they could go shopping for proper attire. Rhodes, ever the honest man, now found himself in the awkward position of shopping for clothes with his girlfriend, while still on the clock. Even worse, since the clothes would count as a work uniform, he could use guild funds to pay for them. His conscience should have been screaming. But instead, he was smiling. Myra had already decided that he needed a nice suit, so the two of them headed into a boutique that carried formal wear. "Why do I feel like the master is more excited about this than we are?" Rhodes asked, amused. "Oh? Are you not excited to go shopping with me?" Myra teased. "Of course I am. I could shop with you all day." Rhodes straightened his back proudly. Myra held a blazer up in front of him, hanger and all, eyeing the fit critically. She tugged on his sleeve, signaling him to lift his arm so she could measure better, then hung the coat back up and moved on to another. "Sounds like we will be shopping all day." She laughed. "Just tell the master you're sourcing supplies for the guild." Myra found herself grinning. She was definitely becoming a little mischievous, already thinking of excuses to dodge the master's questions. "Try this one on," she said at last, pushing Rhodes into the fitting room with a dark blue suit. "If I say I don't know how to put it on," Rhodes said with a sly grin. "Will you come help me?" Myra yanked the curtain closed in a flash. "Get changed, quickly." Well, when it came to taking off clothes, speed was important. From the other side of the curtain, Myra added, "Actually, the master heard that a group of reporters are visiting tomorrow. That's why he wants everything looking presentable. It's just a couple interviews. Isn't that overkill?" Rhodes replied. "The guild was just rebuilt. The master wants the outside world to see our new image, more respectable, more trustworthy." He's really thinking ahead, huh? By the time they finished talking, Rhodes stepped out of the fitting room in the suit Myra picked. He looked sharp, but she shook her head slightly. "Change the shirt," she said. "And then I'll see if you look better with a tie or a bow tie." After a few more wardrobe swaps, Myra stepped back and finally nodded with satisfaction. She'd settled on the bow tie, which she adjusted herself. But then she knelt slightly and poked Rhodes in the stomach. "They need to take it in here," she said, pressing gently against his waistline. "It'll look sharper if it's a bit tighter." Rhodes had a sneaking suspicion that Myra's hand had lingered a bit too long on his ABS. "If I wear a white suit now?" he asked. "What am I supposed to wear at our wedding?" "Who cares?" Myra puffed out her cheeks and shoved him back into the fitting room. He still hadn't proposed, yet had the nerve to bring up weddings? Myra was fuming. Fine. She'd give him a month. If he didn't propose by then, no wedding. 2 months? 3? 3 months? Myra stood over it in her mind. If he still didn't make a move, then she'd just have to propose herself. When Rhodes finally came out of the fitting room, Myra immediately felt his gaze on her. Rhodes, meanwhile, was completely confused. Myra was already at the register with an armful of clothing, chatting with the clerk about adjustments. Did he take too long changing? No, he was sure he changed quickly. They left the shop side by side. The clerk told them the alterations would be done by that afternoon and asked them to come back later to pick everything up. Honestly, it would have been better to get the suits custom fitted at a proper tailor. But with reporters arriving the next day, there just wasn't time. On the way back to the guild, they passed by a boutique, and Myra suddenly stopped in her tracks, her eyes glued to the display window. Rhodes looked over. A bridal shop. Myra had walked up to the glass without realizing it, staring inside with a wistful look. I wonder which one would suit me best. You'd look beautiful in any of them. Rhodes replied reflexively, and immediately realized that might have been the wrong thing to say right now. He tried to recover. Do you want to go in and try one on? Myra clearly wanted to. But after a moment of temptation, she huffed, rolled her eyes, and turned away. No, let's just go back to the guild. Rhodes hurried to catch up beside her, silently wondering if it was time to reshuffle his short-term plans and bump a certain ring-related item to the top of the list. When the two of them returned to the guild, they found Makarov at the bar, wiping his eyes, a crumpled tissue in one hand. He was crying. Because, once again, Fairy Tail's brand new guild hall hadn't escaped its fate. Apparently, Natsu had heard somewhere that Gagiel had joined Fairy Tail, so he stormed over to pick a fight. He also wanted to interrogate Gagiel about where he learned Dragon Slayer magic, and more importantly, whether he had any clues about the dragon's whereabouts. But Gagiel had already taken off on a job. Unable to find him, and already feeling out of place with a newly rebuilt guild hall, Natsu did what Natsu always did best, cause a scene. Now the guild was in chaos. Tables were overturned, furniture shattered. Rhodes and Myra stood at the entrance, unsure where to even begin. In one corner, Lucy was lying under a table, hands clasped protectively over her head. The position looked oddly suggestive, but really, she was just terrified, and maybe a little thrilled. Noticing Rhodes and Myra at the door, Lucy awkwardly crawled out from under the table and hurried over. Rhodes asked, "What in the world happened this time? Didn't Tirza try to stop them?" "She did." Lucy groaned. "She fought harder than anyone." "What? Why?" "Because her brand new uniform got torn up during the brawl." Lucy explained, sweat dropping. She was furious. "And what about the master? He was here today, wasn't he?" "Don't even bring that up," Lucy said with a sigh. "He turned into a giant to break up the fight, stopped Natsu, but wrecked half the guild in the process. No wonder he's crying." Rhodes muttered. "Elfman." Myra suddenly dashed toward a far wall, checking on her brother. Sure enough, Elfman was once again plastered face first against the wall. "Why is he hanging there again?" Myra frowned. Lucy winced. "He got knocked out in the opening seconds." Honestly, it was surprising. Elfman had fought bravely during the Phantom Lord incident. But when it came to brawls inside the guild, especially against the likes of Tirza or Myra, it seemed even his strength wasn't enough. Just then, Makarov came wailing over. "Rhodes. Myra. What do I do?" The master sobbed, practically pulling his hair out. "Sorcerer's Weekly coming tomorrow for the interview. He's one of the top reporters in Fiore." He clutched his heart dramatically. "I told everyone to behave for 2 days, 2 days. And they still tore the place apart. You're not really in a position to scold anyone, are you?" Lucy muttered under her breath. "You caused half the destruction yourself." But when she heard the name Sorcerers, Lucy's eyes lit up. "Wait. The Sorcerers? From Fiore Weekly? He's coming here for a feature?" Suddenly, her fear was replaced by ambition. Underneath Lucy's sweet smile was a competitive streak, a desire for the spotlight. She remembered how Rhodes had become the best newcomer in all of Fiore after his interview last year. She clenched her fists. "This is my chance," she told herself. "I'll be the next best newcomer. Famous in every corner of the kingdom." Chapter 410, Let Myra Perform? Fortunately, the reporter was scheduled to arrive tomorrow, not today, so they still had time to clean up the mess. Following the age-old guild rule of who breaks it, cleans it, the master led by example and got to work alongside the rest. Meanwhile, Rhodes was hunched over the counter, scribbling rapidly through paperwork. He had somehow ended up in charge of all the guild's clerical duties. A few minutes later, he glanced up at the old man, who was oddly cheerful despite the chaos. Rhodes narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Was this your plan all along, old man?" Later that evening, Rhodes left to collect the newly tailored clothes and changed into his crisp, formal suit. His official title of store manager had taken effect, but naturally, everyone in Fairy Tail preferred to call him the bartender. Bartender or not, Rhodes didn't mind shaking a cocktail glass with a bit of flair. If nothing else, he was an expert at mixing the bare minimum. Half a glass of 300 jewel whiskey, half a glass of 200 jewel soda, swirl them together, slap a fancy name on it, and sell it for 10,000 jewels. Let them scream about the price. He called it gourmet markup. That night, Rhodes stood behind the bar in his sharp new outfit, gently swirling a glass of red wine. He posed like a pro for 30 minutes straight, and only Myra complimented him on how handsome he looked. That left him both proud and a little disappointed. Still, Thanks to the combined efforts of the usual mischief makers, the guild was finally put back together again. Though when the big day arrived, it was still as noisy as ever. Many local residents, those who had grown attached to Fairy Tale's unique charm, began frequenting the tavern just to enjoy the chaos. As long as nobody crossed the line, it was perfectly acceptable to shout, argue, or even start a playful scuffle. If you got punched, well, you could punch back. That was the Fairy Tale way. No one had to worry about being bullied with magic either. In fact, the rebuilt tavern was somehow even rowdier than before. This was partially the master's fault. He had summoned every available member back to the guild for the interview just to make the place feel full and lively. Even Natsu was called in. After all, the name of the Fire Dragon Slayer still carried weight. Unfortunately, trouble came with the package. At that moment, Natsu was standing on a table, breakdancing awkwardly and letting out the occasional puff of fire. Vegeta had jumped onto a nearby table, challenging him to a duel of weird moves. Elfman, Warren, Nab, and a few others surrounded them, cheering like children at a festival. Master. Rhodes started, walking over carefully. He wasn't sure how to phrase it delicately. He had seen how hopeful the old man had been that morning, how proudly he had arrived wearing his coat emblazoned with the Holy Cross insignia, even in this unbearable summer heat. They had spent all of yesterday prepping for the interview, only for the guild to return to complete chaos. Makarov stared blankly at the ceiling for a long while, then finally let out a long sigh. Forget it. This is Fairy Tale, after all. Myra giggled nearby. It's more fun this way. Makarov turned to look at her, raising an eyebrow. So that's why you're not scolding them. Maybe just a little. Myra said innocently, trying to dodge the blame. Well then, you'd better make up for it later by performing a show. Try to save face for the guild. What? How can you just spring that on me? I wasn't prepared at all. I don't care. Makarov said, crossing his arms like a stubborn child. You're still performing. Myra looked helplessly at Rhodes. What do you think I should do? Rhodes answered without thinking. Smash a boulder with your chest? Crush a skull with your bare hands? Makarov choked on air. Would anyone normal tell their girlfriend to perform something like that? But Rhodes didn't see a problem, because Myra could actually do it. Myra, suppressing a laugh, turned to the master and grinned. Alright then. You lie down and place the rocks. I'll smash them myself. That's fine. Rhodes said confidently. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Smashing a couple of stones won't be a problem. Seeing that Master Makarov's face was about to turn pale from stress, Myra finally gave in. She let out a gentle sigh and said, Alright, just tell me what you actually want me to perform. I'm not really thinking about what I want to see. Rhodes muttered. Then, after a pause, he suggested. Why not sing something? I don't think I've heard you sing in a while. Myra's eyes brightened. Okay. The guild had more than enough members who could play instruments. If needed, they could easily form 2 or 3 bands on the spot. Didn't you say there was an interview today? Why does the guild still look like a wreck? At last, someone finally seemed concerned about the interview. Lucy, you're a little late today. Wait, did you dress up for this? It was hard not to notice. Lucy's hair had been carefully styled, her outfit was a little more refined than usual, and she was even wearing a matching necklace and bracelet. If Myra had come dressed like that, Rhodes would have lifted her off her feet, showered her with praise, and kissed her right on the forehead. But this was Lucy, so he simply asked with polite curiosity. Well, yeah. Lucy said, puffing up proudly. I need to make a good impression before I debut across the continent. Her energy was infectious, though it faded quickly as she looked around the guild. But it feels like I'm the only one who cares. Hey, look at it positively. Rhodes said. Since no one else is trying to stand out, your performance will draw even more attention. Lucy lit up again. You're right. Positive girls really were easy to cheer up. Rhodes answered Lucy's questions about his past interview experience, though his eyes kept drifting to where Myra was gathering musicians. He had already finished everything on his to-do list yesterday, so he was mostly free today. If Master Makarov hadn't specifically asked him to stay and wait for the reporters, he would have been reading in the library by now. You're looking great today, Lucy. A voice called out. Mirza had just arrived, a little later than usual. Instead of her waitress uniform, she wore her familiar armor. Mirza, weren't you going to be one of the waitresses today? Lucy asked. At the mention of it, Mirza looked a bit down. My uniform got ruined yesterday. It couldn't be completely repaired, even with sewing magic, so I went back to armor. Lucy tried to cheer her up. Oh no. Can't you ask Myra for a replacement? I'm pretty sure there are extras stored away. No. Mirza replied with a firm shake of her head. It wouldn't be the same. That one had. Meaning. Lucy blinked, then nodded. Wait. Urza, your armor looks a little different from the usual one, doesn't it? Urza smiled brightly. Yes. This is a brand new model crafted by Heart Crews. I've been waiting for it for a long time. What do you think? It looks great. Lucy exclaimed. Rhodes gave a thumbs up in agreement. The way Lucy caught onto Urza's feeling so quickly showed how well she understood her guildmate. She really did take good care of her friends. Cool, cool, cool. A sudden, energetic shout cut through the air as a stranger came sliding across the guild floor on his knees. No one was sure what kind of material his pants were made of, but somehow, he managed to glide all the way from the front door to the counter without slowing down. The man had wild blonde hair shaped into a cone at the top, sunglasses resting on his forehead, and a camera slung across his chest. His entire face radiated excitement. Is that Sorcerer's Ace reporter? Rhodes asked, narrowing his eyes. He vaguely remembered seeing the guy last year, though they hadn't spoken. That hairstyle was unforgettable. The man immediately began snapping photos of Urza. The Titania. The real Urza Scarlet. So cool. Hello. Urza greeted him politely. I didn't get the chance to properly prepare, sorry about that. No problem. What we want is the most natural presentation possible. The man replied while scribbling in a small notebook. If you don't mind, can I ask a few questions? Of course. Urza said with a nod. Lucy stepped forward, her big eyes sparkling with hope. Hello. I'm Urza's friend, Lucy. I just joined the guild this year. But the reporter's focus was glued to Urza. He didn't even seem to hear Lucy speak. How many sets of armor can you change into? Over 100. I've honestly lost count. Cool. Which one is your favorite? The bunny girl outfit. Bunny, bunny, bunny. So cool. Then, may I ask? Lucy tried to interject again, but there wasn't a single gap for her to speak. Worse still, while continuing his questions, the reporter led Urza to a nearby table to chat in peace, completely forgetting anyone else existed. When the interview finally ended and Urza stood up, Lucy approached with a smile that was equal parts sweet and hopeful. Cool. You must be the fairy strategist. Jason suddenly exclaimed, snapping a photo of her. May I interview you too? Lucy opened her mouth, excited at last, but Jason's gaze slipped right past her as he ran up to Rhodes instead. Rhodes chuckled and poured him a drink. Sure, go ahead. But don't forget to interview our newest member later. Mr. Rhodes, Lucy whispered, touched. So thoughtful. No wonder he was able to win Mara Jane's heart. No problem. Jason agreed enthusiastically. Excuse me, is the rumor about you and Miss Mara Jane true? Yes. We've been dating for almost 5 months now. Rhodes answered calmly. If he dared deny it, he knew he wouldn't leave the guild in one piece. Cool. Chapter 411, Flickering Thoughts and Marriage Proposal. Jason threw out a flurry of questions about Rhodes and Mara Jane, clearly hungry for gossip. After he'd gotten his fill of romantic rumors, he finally remembered to ask about the ghost rumor circulating around the guild, and then turned to a more serious question. What was Rhodes's strongest magic? Rhodes could answer most things honestly, but when it came to his magic, he had to dodge the question a little. Last year, his strongest summon was a scuttle crab. This year, the title belonged to the merc wolf. With 2 heads and a massive frame, it looked fierce enough. Whether people believed him or not was up to them. Jason originally wanted to interview Mara Jane right after finishing with Rhodes. Ideally, he would have liked to interview them as a couple. Unfortunately, Myra wasn't around because she was backstage preparing for her performance. Lucy, standing nearby, looked at Jason with hopeful eyes. But Jason scanned the room, then rushed over to Elfman instead. Can you tell me, what does being manly mean to you? A man is a man. Elfman roared. What's your opinion of Rhodes? Rhodes is a man too. You're seriously asking that instead of interviewing me? Lucy wailed. Tears welled up in her eyes. How could he break his promise? Rhodes gave her a sympathetic look while Happy burst into unrestrained laughter. Lucy shot a glare at the blue cat. But Jason had already pivoted again. Happy. Tell me, why are you blue? Lucy collapsed to the floor and began pounding her fists. I actually lost to a cat. This is so unfair. Rhodes had to bite his cheek to stop himself from laughing. At this point, he was convinced Jason wasn't a regular reporter. He was a fairy tale superfan. The guy could name nearly every guild member on site. He even had background knowledge on each of them, asking personalized questions like a true connoisseur. He even approached the Thunder God tribe to ask if there was a love triangle between them. As for Lucy, she had only joined the guild recently. Jason probably hadn't had time to become a fan of hers yet. Master Mikarov, could you share your hopes and dreams for the guild? Jason asked, camera still at the ready. Ah. Of course, of course. I hope that everyone here embraces love and justice, improves day by day, and keeps moving forward bravely." Rhodes silently swore to the heavens. That speech was definitely something the master had written himself. It wasn't ghostwritten. It was the first time Rhodes had ever seen the old man so nervous. When chairing a strategy meeting or scolding Natsu, he was steady as a rock. But here, in front of the press, his whole body was stiff. Just as Makarov's interview ended, the lights in the guild dimmed. The windows were suddenly covered, casting everything into shadow except the stage. A bright spotlight fell on the closed curtain. "Here it comes. Get ready for the performance of Fairy Tale's beloved star." Makarov's mood lifted instantly, full of pride. He hoped his speech, paired with Myra's performance, would help improve the guild's image. "Oh, Miss Mara Jane. So cool." Jason clenched his fists with excitement, only regretting that he didn't have a glow stick to wave. The rest of the guild buzzed with anticipation. It had been quite a while since Myra last performed. "Is she going to sing? I've been waiting for this forever." "Damn you, Rhodes." "Huh?" Rhodes turned toward the voice, but the room was too dark to tell who'd said it. The crowd's shouting made it even harder to guess. Someone clearly wanted payback for something. The curtain slowly opened, and silence fell over the guild. The spotlight bathed Myra in a warm, glowing light. At that moment, Myra stood on the stage wearing slim blue jeans and a white tank top, loosely draped with a denim jacket. She wore no necklace, no earrings, and no other accessories. Her silver hair was simply tied into a ponytail, giving her the look of a cheerful, approachable girl next door. Hovering in front of her was Little Bee, carrying microphone with tiny wings. The instant Rhodes saw her, he forgot about any earlier teasing or complaints. Seeing Myra like this instantly lifted his spirits. He decided to let everyone off the hook, just this once. Lucy, who had just suffered the cruel blow of being passed over for an interview, quietly found a high stool in front of the bar and took a seat. She rested her chin on her hands, waiting eagerly for Myra's performance to begin. Myra gave a cheeky wink into the darkness, aiming at a certain someone, then gestured for the band to begin. As the melody played, Myra's body swayed gently with the rhythm. Then she opened her mouth and began to sing, "Swaying thoughts ripple through my heart, I want to walk with you, drifting closer and closer, to the sparkling waves that kiss your dreamlike shore." Her voice was soft and warm, flowing like a mountain spring. It filled the room gently, seeping into everyone's hearts. As she sang, it was as if you could see the shimmering ocean, the soft sands, and a couple strolling hand in hand beneath a sunny sky. Expressions of serenity and joy spread throughout the guild like a wave of calm. Mirza and Lucy glanced at one another, wondering if this song was something Myra had written after her last vacation. It carried a tender intimacy that felt deeply personal. "There were times I nearly gave up, thinking I'd never meet the right one, but now I've made up my mind, it's all for you." Rhodes' heart stirred. The longer he listened, the more he felt something blooming inside. As he looked toward Myra, he caught a flicker in her eyes, at first uncertain, almost sorrowful. But it was quickly replaced by a spark of courage and joy. Elfman sat frozen, his fists clenched. Myra's voice echoed his own feelings from darker days, back when both he and his sister were buried in grief. Now he watched, heart swelling, as his sister sang, radiant and strong, rising like sunlight from the shadows. A few listeners with sharper hearts began to realize just who this song was meant for. Nobody had expected Myra to be this romantic. "I want to walk with you, and try to tell you with just my eyes, in the dreams we share, you look at me and answer. With a kiss." As the lyrics became more direct and emotionally charged, a blush crept across Myra's cheeks. Her voice trembled with shyness, her eyes full of gentle love. At that point, even the densest people in the room should have figured out who you and I referred to. Of course, some still instinctively imagined themselves and the person they loved. Visca, for instance, clutched her chest, cheeks flushed, heart racing. She thought of Alzak and how often their eyes had met like this, though there had been no kiss, not yet. Feeling overwhelmed, she buried her face in her hands and muttered to herself that she should go buy flowers again. "I used to be afraid of showing how I felt, turning away from the kindness of others. But meeting you must have been destiny, because somehow, you changed me. These swaying thoughts ripple in my heart, and I just want to stay by your side. Even when lonely seasons come." As the song transitioned into a softer, brighter melody, Myra's voice overflowed with joy and heartfelt longing. Everyone watching could clearly see the glow on her face, the quiet happiness in her eyes, and, almost in unison, their gaze drifted toward one person in the crowd. Rhodes. He felt like he'd just been struck by a bolt of lightning. His mind blanked. Every noise around him faded, Lucy's teasing, the clapping, the whistles, the cheers, they all vanished. Right now, all he could see was Myra. All he could hear was her. As the guild lights slowly lit up, Myra ended her song with a graceful bow. The applause erupted, and reporters rushed forward with cameras, but Rhodes had already moved. In one stride, he cut through the crowd, pushed past the reporters without hesitation, and jumped onto the stage. Then pulled Myra into a tight embrace. A chorus of playful whistles and cheers broke out from below. Ooh. Woo. Everyone knew they were dating, but it wasn't often that Rhodes did something so bold. Someone even shouted, "Are they gonna kiss next?" Flushed with embarrassment, Myra squirmed a bit in his arms and gently pushed against him. "Let go, people are watching. And there are reporters." Jason, the reporter who had been knocked to the floor, didn't seem to mind one bit. On the contrary, he lay there snapping photos excitedly. These were the kind of dramatic, heartfelt moments he lived for. But things were about to get even more explosive. Rhodes released Myra from the hug and stepped back slightly. He didn't let go of her hand though. His left hand still gently held her right. Then, with his other hand, he raised it and began writing in the air. Flower, snow, fire, butterfly, starlight, each word shimmered with magic, floating gracefully in the air. One by one, they transformed into real effects. Petals fluttered, snowflakes danced, flames flickered gently, glowing butterflies circled them, and starlight sparkled like a constellation suspended above them. Myra stared in awe, covering her mouth with one hand. Her heart thumped wildly in her chest. Hand in hand, the two of them stood beneath the glowing display. They first gazed at the floating words, then slowly turned to look into each other's eyes. Myra's lips trembled. Her breath caught. Her whole world quieted. She didn't blink. She just waited. Rhodes took a deep breath. "I actually came up with a lot of ideas," he said softly. "I thought about different places, different plans, different moments. I wanted everything to be perfect." He looked deeply into her eyes. Even though he'd seen them countless times, tonight, they seemed even more beautiful. In her eyes, he saw his own reflection. Scientifically speaking, it was just light refracted on a curved lens forming a miniature image. But Rhodes now preferred a simpler way to express it. "Her eyes are filled with me, and mine are filled with her. You know I like to plan things out first," he said, his voice unsteady. "But right now, I'm not thinking about plans. I'm just following my heart. I didn't prepare anything fancy. I just felt that I had to stand in front of you. I couldn't wait, not even another minute." His thoughts were scattered, and his words were messy. But Myra didn't mind. Her eyes were already misty. To her, every stammered sentence was more touching than any well-rehearsed love letter. In fact, it was even better, because it was real. The usual noise of the tavern faded away. A few guildmates who were about to shout something inappropriate were quickly silenced, some by being grabbed by the collar, others by a warning squeeze from Makarov's oversized hand. None of that reached Rhodes' ears. In his heart, there was only one thought that rang crystal clear. "I've always hoped to meet someone I'd want to spend my whole life with. And now I know I've found her. I want to walk forward with her, always smiling." He looked into Myra's eyes, his own full of unwavering resolve. "What I mean is, Miss Mara Jane Strauss, I've fallen for you completely, and I can't help it anymore. Will you marry me?" Myra's eyes shimmered, and her smile bloomed like a sunrise after a long night. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. This man talked too much. The place, the time, whether it was perfect, none of it mattered. Only the last words did. "Yes." Myra gently pulled her hand from his, then jumped up into his arms, wrapping both arms tightly around his neck, her feet lifting off the ground. Her face nearly touched his. With a voice filled with joy, she cried out for everyone to hear. "I do." Rhodes wasn't sure what his face looked like. He was probably smiling like a complete fool, but he didn't care. Wrapping his arms around Myra's waist, he spun her in circles on the stage. A wave of cheers erupted throughout the guild. "Ooh." Jason's voice rang out too. "Cool." As he clicked away with his camera, capturing the moment from where he lay on the floor. Makarov chuckled, finally letting go of a few troublemakers he'd been holding by the scruff of their necks. With a snap of his fingers, golden sparkles appeared and floated above the stage like twinkling stars. Then came a burst of pink smoke that curled into a heart, courtesy of Wakaba's pipe magic. Mikau added a second glowing heart made of purple flames. One by one, the guild's seasoned mages joined in. Brothers, sisters, uncles, aunties, they all smiled, and used their magic to add blessings to the stage. The younger generation couldn't keep it together. Ursa, for example, was completely stunned. She stood frozen, muttering lines that sounded like something a bride would say to her groom, as if she had suddenly been transported to a wedding ceremony in her own mind. Levy quickly covered her mouth. She had heard Rhodes mention a proposal a few days ago, but she hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Snapping out of it, she finally raised her hand and used solid script magic to enhance the background wall. summoning glowing words and effects that made the moment even more magical. Behind her, Jet and Roy were lost in their own worlds, filled with envy and daydreams. Visca and Elsa clocked eyes, blushed, and quickly looked away. Then, without a word, they aimed their guns upward and fired a volley of sparkling magic bullets that burst into celebratory fireworks over the stage. Happy fluttered over to Natsu's shoulder and smacked the back of his head. "Natsu, let's launch some fireworks too." "Huh?" Natsu blinked, not quite following, but the warm atmosphere swept him up. He grinned and started spitting out small fireballs into the air, which exploded into brilliant bursts above the guild. Lucy had watched Rhodes dash onto the stage with her own eyes and was perhaps the most shocked of anyone. But soon, her heart filled with joy for them. She folded her hands gently in front of her chest, her gaze full of admiration and blessings. Seeing everyone celebrating with their own magic, she quickly pulled out a silver key. "Open, Gate of Lyra." With a twirl, the small harp-playing celestial spirit appeared and began playing soft, joyful music to accompany the scene. "Sis. Wah." Elfman burst into loud sobs, his face twisted and blotchy as he tried to hide his tears behind his arm. This is so manly." Warren gave him a supportive pat on the shoulder. Despite Elfman's emotional outburst, Warren could hear his true feelings clearly. "This is amazing. Sis, I'm so happy for you. And Rhodes is a real man." Vegeta grabbed Nab and started dancing wildly in place. No one quite knew what the dance was supposed to be, but it was hard to miss their overflowing excitement. Lockie and a few waitresses found the old handheld fireworks tubes left over from a past guild celebration. With laughter and cheer, they cracked them open, sending glittering confetti and sparkling ribbons floating through the air. Just then, Gray and Juvia returned from a mission, still brushing dust off their cloaks. They hadn't quite figured out what was happening. But Gray glanced around, saw the atmosphere, and shrugged. "Guess we're joining in." Juvia beamed in agreement. She gracefully raised her hand, and a ribbon of water curled through the air above the crowd. It danced like silk, drawing elegant shapes before freezing into shimmering crystals that reflected the guild's many lights. Redus, flustered but determined, waved his brush in wide strokes, conjuring floating images of flowers, balloons, and rainbows to decorate the scene. At the same time, he scribbled furiously to capture the moment on paper before it passed. On stage, Rhodes continued spinning Myra in his arms. After a few joyful turns, he gently set her down. They gazed into each other's eyes, the world around them fading away. In that instant, nothing else mattered. No words were needed. Everything they felt could be read clearly in the other's expression. Rhodes slowly lowered his head. Myra looked up at him, her breath catching in her throat. As he leaned closer, her cheeks flushed, and her heartbeat quickened. Then, closing her eyes, she stood on her toes and kissed him, right there in front of the entire guild, amid the thunderous cheers and awed gasps of their friends and family. Chapter 412, Brother-in-law Rhodes was telling the truth. He truly wasn't prepared this time. He hadn't even bought the most important thing, a ring. He stood there, feeling slightly ashamed, clutching a small wooden ring in his hand, unsure if he should even bring it out. It had been hastily crafted using his magic from the Brambleback's wood. Although he'd carefully carved intricate, delicate patterns onto it, at the end of the day, it was still just wood. Looking at Rhodes now, Myra felt amused, thinking how wooden he could sometimes be. He had pleaded, hugged, and kissed her. Did it really matter what he was holding in his hands at this moment? Didn't she already know he'd been short on jewels lately? Generously, Myra extended her left hand toward Rhodes, giving it a playful wave, her eyes sparkling with encouraging warmth. Seeing this, Rhodes could only gently slide the wooden ring onto her middle finger, apologetically whispering, "This is just temporary, I'll get you something better soon." Myra withdrew her hand, examining the ring closely, tracing the delicate carvings with a gentle touch. Then, holding her hand to her heart as though she'd just received the most precious treasure, she softly shook her head, saying, "No, you've given this to me, it's mine now. I don't want anything else." After all, what was truly more valuable, a gift bought from a store or one handmade with care? Standing on her tiptoes, Myra leaned in and kissed Rhodes affectionately on the cheek.